Um, yeah, some people are not used to unearthing things about themselves or their
Yeah,
family that can cause like a lot of internal distress. And then obviously if someone did it, they feel like something has been exposed without like almost involuntarily, then
like suddenly it's out there.
yeah. Well, I mean, on my end, I don't know. I just those things I've never had an issue discussing things that are personal in nature or like flaws or faults or whatever. But yeah,
I felt the same way when I helped my friend with the like military spouse podcast. Like
huh?
we would talk a lot about like what's going on being like an army spouse, and like my wife was gone at the time, and so like there's potential to like say stuff because like your spouse is out of mind, they're away, or you're like, oh, it's so difficult when they're gone, and like that sucks. But some people would say stuff like that and then be like, oh shit, you got to take that down because then like
Yeah,
my spouse hears about it,
yeah.
like
As if what are the consequences? As if like everyone that hears this lives some sort of pristine, perfect existence, and
yeah,
therefore
right.
not some flaw in your existence is going to be, so bizarre
Gonna
to
really
whatever. But
really take down everyone's image of me.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, dude, honestly, that's how I noticed about you. When we met a month ago, whenever it was. Just some quick background. I mean, I've known Marshall as my friend David Mayo's friend. Um, I guess more conceptually, I've just heard your name ever since I met Mayo in college. Mayo's been on the podcast, and we were both just at his bachelor party about a month ago back in Georgia.
Yeah,
And I don't even know if we'd met before, but you were the first person I met when I walked into the house because I came in super late. You were the only person up. And I was like, oh, Marshall, I've heard the name. And then I was like,
yeah.
I don't know if I've actually seen the face. And then we had I could you had very good calm energy and like an openness to you just in that quick exchange where I like borrow, you gave me a blanket or pillows or whatever. And then the next day immediately I was like, oh, this guy's different. Uh I've always felt so different from that group of guys that I grew up with and
Dude,
went to college
yeah.
with. I love them all to death. They're my boys, and they've always been my boys as long as like keep me around. But like I've always felt like an outsider. I felt like an outsider everywhere. But then
Yeah.
I saw you, and I was like, okay, this is kind of you in this. That was the first time I've been around that group of guys, and someone else came around that I felt was like me, like kind of got me in a way
Yeah.
those guys didn't get me. Not that those, I don't know. You
No,
kind
no,
of
no.
what I'm saying. I
I'm
think I
telling you, when we like were, I was hanging out with you in the little like hot tub on the first like big day, and I
mm-hmm.
was thinking to myself like, oh, finally, someone I can like talk to here that I will understand better because like I love these guys and they're David's friends. I'm sure I've met everyone in that group at least once from
Uh-huh.
some time or another. I was like, this dude, I can talk to this guy,
Yeah.
and that was like such a relief. I felt really excited.
Yeah. And I felt that about you regardless. And then what really put over the top, where I was like, whoa, who is this fucking guy? Was I don't know, it was the first night or the second night we were there. You just came up to me out of nothing, or maybe we were just like talking with other people in the kitchen, and you just said that very direct, like, hey man, I just want to let you know. Or you said something like, want to let you know I appreciate your openness, or
Yeah.
I don't know, just like I like you. Basically, you're saying like you're a cool dude, but you said it in a way that was very eloquent and meaningful, and it felt very genuine. Like I was like, this dude's not just bullshitting me or like has is drunk or saying like you're cool, bro, whatever.
I
This is
just
like a
love you so
genuine
much.
book. It was a genuine like heart to heart, genuine communication is what it was, and
I
like
mean, what it
appreciation of
was
someone else.
I was
And
talking with David and I just said, Alex was just so, we're sitting there talking about life, and I've been listening to all the guys in this group talk about life, but the way you're talking about it was so self-reflective, and it was so like aware of who you are and what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and how that influences your life. I was like, David, I think that is such a really great and rare quality. And then he was like, yeah, Alex is just a really great dude in that kind of respect. And then like you were walking in right after I said that, and I was thinking to myself, like, well, why wouldn't I just say that to Alex right now? Like I've
yeah,
been saying it to David. I may as well
yeah.
just say it. And I'm so glad I did. Like it's
No, me
really been
too, man.
fun.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, now I feel a little bit like I'm putting you at a disadvantage because I've been listening to your podcast now. So I have all this, like, I've listened to every episode with your family, all the episodes that are you. the first one I listened to was with David because he's like one of the best people in the world.
Yeah.
And I listened to all the ones with Buzz. I listened to the Susanna Spisha one because we went to middle school together.
Oh, that's right.
I think those are the only ones I've gotten to. But I mean, I spent a whole week every day. I like go on a long walk and I listen to podcasts, and I like put all my regular podcasts aside. It was listening to these like 4 hour talks with like your dad and stuff. And I was like, I almost feel like I'm cheating on it. Like I'm getting
Uh,
so much insider information.
yeah. Well, first off, thank you for listening. I think it's so crazy to hear that someone like actually listens to these. It purely was the initiative to start all this was just for to me to get to know someone like my dad, who I knew nothing about, And then I guess there's some value in that more broadly I thought myself. But that's the other thing I want to say as far as the background here is like I don't know anything about you. Everyone else you've interviewed on this podcast, there are a couple towards the end there, some people that I work with at Equinox in DC who I had just known for several months, but I had been spending all day, every day for months. And everyone else is literally family or my closest friends. And but that's what I'm saying about when you saying that to me in the kitchen and just the connection we made briefly at Mayo's bachelor party was that I don't know. You automatically got placed in that group of those people that I've spent all this time with, just based on like kind of instinct. And yeah, but this does bring a very unique quality to this particular episode interview because all the shit you're gonna tell me, I don't know any of these answers.
I know.
Marshall, I know you're Mayo's buddy from childhood. I know you're in the military, the army, I believe, and you're a cool guy. Like that's it. Honestly, I didn't even know your last name until I just sent you this Zoom link right now, and I went into my Gmail and I typed Marshall, and I was like, Marshall Rogers, I guess is his last name. Fuck.
That's me.
So awesome. Yeah, if you don't have anything else to get off context, then let's get into it. I'm excited because I know like most of these interviews, I'm like my mom, like I know where she's born, where she grew up and shit, and so it's like okay, stay locked in, like focus on what she's talking about, even though you know it. So, but with this, I'm like I don't know anything. So, you might start with when and where you were born, and let's go from there.
So, I'm gonna start with like a quick
prayer
where my parents came from.
Great.
So my mom is from Philadelphia. My dad's from Delaware.
Okay.
And they were professional ballet dancers.
What?
So I know it starts off. You don't expect it to start there, right?
No, that's good.
So my dad went to University of Delaware. My mom went to North Carolina School of the Arts. When she graduated college, she had a BFA in ballet, and he had a degree in like communications and theater, and then had taken classes for her last year, also at North Carolina School of the Arts. So after that, they danced in Montreal and in New York City, and then they went to Atlanta to be in the Atlanta Ballet.
Okay.
So they were in the Atlanta Ballet, and I think they were starting to age out of like ballet time. It's like a real 16. Unless you're like the best ballet dancer, you start to age out in like your mid to late 20s. And so my dad got like a regular job and they started having kids. So I was born in DeKalb Medical Center in 1987. I think my mom was already teaching ballet. I don't know for sure how long she took off between like professional ballet dancing and like running a studio, but my whole life that I can remember, she's been a ballet teacher.
Okay.
My dad has always had kind of like office jobs that like he's good at and he doesn't find exciting, but are like good and can support the family and all that. I have an older sister who was born in 84 and a younger sister born in 90. And so we lived in Doraville.
Wait, so can I jump in here real quick? Please. What did your dad do after ballet?
The easiest answer is he was an editor. So he worked for like the one that I remember most is a construction market data company.
Okay.
And so they would publish this like, thesaurus sized book on like market research that they would sell, I guess, to salespeople in the construction world. And he would edit like the articles in that and stuff like that. So he did that for a nuclear assurance company, for this construction company. And then when I was like high school and an adult, for a like accounts payable, accounts receivable information company.
Okay.
That's like the best I can do. I have a real limited background on like white collar jobs. So
me too. That's why like that, because those things honestly genuinely interest me, because I'm like, I didn't grow up with a dad, and I know nothing about like real. All I know growing up was like teacher world, school system.
right.
Like I'm always very interested in it. Like, how do people make a living?
It blows my mind. Like I
Editing.
don't understand that kind of job. It's
Yeah.
like, so how did you get up every day and say to yourself like, I'm gonna go edit this giant data magazine? But like he's really good at it. He's a very good verbal, like written word kind of guy. So like, you know, he did a great job, but it like was not really connected to a big picture, like electric, exciting life mission, like the way I kind of grew up wanting.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't think many people, especially I think, more obviously more so the farther back in history you go, less is connected to like pursuit of dreams, more is connected to survival. Anyway. But I mean, actually not anyway, because that's actually was kind of the impetus for me even starting this podcast, was getting to a point, and I guess I was like 30 at the time that I really started this, was like, what do I want to be when I grow up? Like everyone's gotten married, everyone's having kids. I guess it's an option, but it's certainly not like resonating with me instinctually right now to like pursue that, like a long-term romantic relationship or whatever. Anyway, I was just confused, man. So I was like, I'm gonna go ask those people that I know, I guess, that are stable and I trust what they're doing when they grow up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's I've texted this to you, but like I love that, because I think that stories are like what makes us who we are. And pursuing those stories, especially in like within your family and closest friends, to say like, where did you come from? Where did we come from?
Yeah.
I think is so great, and really it's what makes humans human, is that we have stories about ourselves. Like, I think it's so cool that you're doing that.
Well, cool. Thanks, man. Because I don't know where this, and thank you honestly for coming into my life. Not only for sparking this interview and what's this new friendship, unless like you're about to tell me like fucking 3 hours of how like you molest kids and kill kittens. And I'm like,
So the first guy I killed was.
But no, thank you, A, for that, and then B, you've re-sparked this kind of artistic desire to do this podcast. I've been working on for the past few months a longer term vision for the podcast, but I hadn't had anything scheduled to interview. And so you forced me this week. And ever since we've been planning this, like, you got to do it. Because I get nervous. I get anxious. I've been nervous about this. I've been nervous all week about this. But like, you reinstilled that, like, just do it attitude. But yes, the larger vision going forward is going to be less focused on individual stories and more focused on like the broader journey of humanity, of the universe. Where did this shit come from? Where is it going? Where are we now? But now, once again, thank you very much for coming back in my life, because it also has reminded me, no, dude, you still need to talk to people. You can't just do broad, academic, intellectual, like historical, cosmic retrospective or whatever. You need to talk to human beings too. So anyway, here you go. Your mom, and then so your mom was she ran a school, or she had a school at one point, or like what was the progression of her ballet journey?
This is perfect. So as I'm nearing school age, we moved from Doraville out to like the very southern tip of Forsyth County, like kind of Johns Creek.
Yeah.
Wasn't your mom in the the Forsyth County school systems?
Yeah. She thought she was a school psychologist in Forsyth County for her whole career. Yeah.
That's wild. I mean, so we'll get to. I went to South Forsyth High School, but so I start going to Perimeter Christian School. That's where I met David.
Right.
And my mom started running a ballet school attached to the church. Okay. So Perimeter Church is this like big church in kind of the northern, outside the perimeter Atlanta suburbs. It had this little 1st through 8th grade school, and it was real weird.
Okay. Is it like a mega church?
Yeah, I think
I know. I should know it. Is it on what road is it on?
It's on 141 in Medlock Bridge, I think.
Okay, yes, I know exactly where it is. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's big. It's a big
It's big.
southern megachurch. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So my
It's
mom,
in
like,
that kind of neighborhood.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my mom had like a ballet studio in there's like a bell tower that no one used except for like the track team to run up and down.
Okay.
But she in the very top of the bell tower built like a ballet floor with bars and mirrors. So like
Oh, cool.
she had right off the lunchroom, she had a studio, and then up in the tower she had a studio. So she was like attached to the church for her ballet school.
Okay. That's cool. Tower ballet scene.
It's wild. Yeah.
That's wild.
So my older sister was in David's brother's class. They had been classmates all through first through eighth grade.
Okay.
David, I met right before school started. His mom brought him over to our house. I was dressed in army clothes because I was playing army. And I think his recollection of the event was getting out of the car and being like, what is this guy's deal? And I
Wait,
remember
what are we
being
talking?
like,
You're like, this is before first grade?
okay, here's the first time I thought that I wanted to be in the army. During the Gulf War, my dad went on a like missions trip
Okay.
to Borneo and Malaysia.
Okay.
And so I don't know exactly when that was, but it was around the time of either mobilization or demobilization. So like late 90, early 91. I'm like 3 or 4 years old.
You
And we
remember
went,
this? Do you have a recollection of this?
yes.
Whoa.
So we go to the airport to pick him up. And that's, pre 9/11, you can go to the gate. So we're like
Right, right, right.
waiting at his gate. And there are all these soldiers
Right.
coming off of his plane.
Oh God.
And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but this is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
These guys are the coolest.
When he got off the plane, I was like, Dad, were there like soldiers on your plane? He's like, yeah. I was like, that is, I couldn't, like, I didn't want to hear anything else about it. I was just like, that is the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Sign me
So,
up.
like, I don't have a memory of not wanting to have joined the army. Like, I always just assumed, like, well, this is what I should do.
Right.
Um,
So that stayed all through elementary school, middle school, high school. You just knew you're going to graduate high school and go to the army.
I didn't even, it didn't occur to me that I would do another thing.
Wow. That's kind of
Like,
cool. I wish I had that kind of singular focus.
well, and also, like, I never thought about staying in Georgia. I never thought to myself, like, yeah, this is a place I'd want to stay for the rest of my life. It was like, well, obviously, you become an adult and then you leave home. Like, that's
Right.
what everyone does, right?
Right.
And I felt almost surprised in like college or as a young adult when so many people were like,
Or now.
still living their same neighborhood, or like, yeah, we live down the street from my parents. You do? Why? Like, why didn't you go somewhere else?
Mm-hmm.
But taking it back to,
yeah, I concur with that sentiment still to this day. Not that there's
yeah,
anything wrong with that. I don't want to say that. I used to be, I feel like I was in a much more like critical way in that sense. Now I feel much more just like open minded.
yeah,
There's a lot of utility. I know there's a lot of utility in that. Having community, people like as someone that's lived in a bunch of different places, most
yeah.
of them knowing no one when I first got there, like it's tough, man.
Moving so much sucks. Like,
Yeah.
I understand the idea now. Like, settling down somewhere makes a lot more sense now than it did. But it's still like, this does actually link back pretty well with like perimeter. So this is like it's a Presbyterian, very like Southern evangelical kind of church.
Okay.
So like, I don't think in first and like second and third grade that really makes much of a difference because you're like trying to learn to spell and write. But by like fifth grade was when it started to get like, well, this is different, because like,
so your mom taught ballet there? That was the only impetus for you to go to school there, or were your parents Christian? Were your parents raised Christian, and you guys? How was that?
My mom was raised Catholic and didn't consider herself to be like a Christian, but when she was dating my dad, who grew up Presbyterian, and like, this is like Delaware. It's like pretty small, kind of like, he calls it the hub of the East, which is my favorite term for Delaware because that's such a great way to view Delaware.
What does that
But
mean?
like,
Like a transfer point?
yeah, if you're from Delaware, you want to picture it as like the transfer point between New York City and DC and Philadelphia. I
Okay,
mean,
sure. I've never been
when
to
we lived in
Delaware.
Maryland and when we lived in New York, we would drive through Delaware a lot, but it was like 15 minutes on the bridge. And so I'd
He's like,
text them
here it
like, "Hey
is, kid.
dad, I'm in
Becca.
Delaware." And then like 15 minutes later, like, "All right, we're gone. We left Delaware." But so they were like, Christian, kind of non-denominational, had been coming from the arts world where there weren't a
Right.
lot of, especially like in the late 70s and
Yeah.
early 80s, like, and so they were kind of linking up with littler groups of Christians here and there.
Okay.
We didn't attend Perimeter Church, so we were David was one of the outsiders like me who like we didn't attend the big church that most of the kids attended.
Oh, okay, okay.
My mom started teaching there because they were sending us there because, and I think Susanna Specia said something like that. I hadn't heard this way of looking at it before, but it's probably correct. That Perimeter was like one of the cheap ways you could go to private Christian school,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
most of the other Christian schools in the Atlanta area are like crazy expensive and
Yes.
like super like fancy uniform. Like
Hmm.
we had to wear like polo shirts,
Hmm.
but it was like just buy a polo shirt. Like we
Right.
don't have a like specially manufactured version of this,
They don't have
like
our logo on them or anything.
right. And so we started attending the school. By fifth grade, like I'm reading a lot on my own of like, you know, I love reading history books and like Civil War history and World War II history. And so fifth grade was like our Civil War year that we were supposed to learn all about the Civil War. Well, everyone in the class, and I don't know why as kids we had a stance on this, but everyone in the class was like rooting for the South. And I was like, well, my parents are from the North, so I root for the North. And like in my
Really?
mind was also like, plus they won the war and ended slavery. Like, so those should be kind of the right direction, right?
Yeah, I remember initially learning about it and feeling like, yeah, we fucked, not even we, but like the South fucked up. Like, yeah, I'm from
Yeah,
the
like
South, but like, I remember reading an important lesson and like, oh, you can, just because I'm from here doesn't mean that we're
yeah,
right. You know,
like
like you
maybe
can,
we should be
people you know can
critical.
be wrong. I remember that being an
Exactly.
important lesson, like learning, like, yeah, like the North was the more righteous side. That's interesting.
Well, and so like our teacher would make fun of me in class. She would be like, "Oh, and Marshall,
Fucking
are rooting for
carpetbagger
the North."
pussy.
And I would say out loud things like, "Well, no, I think that the North was right," and the whole class would make fun of me. And then like there were other. So
That's
in
crazy.
retrospect,
What grade are we talking here?
fifth. This is fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay.
So
Wow.
the sketchier. This is what will get people in trouble if anyone hears this. But like one of the things in retrospect that we were like, oh, that's kind of fucked up, is that we had a day, and this was the most exciting day of the whole year. Like kids in fourth grade look forward to getting in fifth grade because they get this day. And it was Runaway Slave Day, where they transformed the school into like the Underground Railroad, and we all dressed up as, we didn't like blackface or anything, but you're in like old clothes and you had to like sneak from room to room, and you there were like teachers that were the like slave catchers and they were chasing you. There was a lake at the school that was like if you got across the lake you got to Canada, to freedom. And there was also the school nurse dressed up in a Grim Reaper costume because sometimes people just died on the Underground Railroad. And so if
Whoa.
she like touched you, then you died. And it was like,
Whoa.
on the one hand, I understand that like you're
Yeah.
trying to teach something.
Yeah.
On the other
You
hand,
give the review first. I don't want to talk on this one first.
but like the idea is like, isn't being a slave the most fun thing that you could possibly do? Not to mention, there's not a single non-white kid in my fifth grade class. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a bunch of white kids cosplaying the opposite of the slave experience. I'm like, this is the best.
And
And
like
so
you're
like
all looking forward to it all year. Like, yeah.
this is the best day. And then like in retrospect, you remember little bit.
Oh, hold on, hold on. Shit.
They converted them all to Christianity. Oh shit, did I lose you?
Yeah, here, I'm back. I'm back. Give it a second. Give it a second.
But yeah, there's like
You hear me?
that classic, you know, well, they got converted to Christianity, so it wasn't that bad. Like I remember reading as an adult an explanation of the lost cause theory of like Southern reactions to the Civil War. And like I realized that's exactly what I was taught in elementary school. And
Mhm.
I just happened to be lucky enough to be telling myself, like, well, no, the South's the bad guys. So, but like these other kids don't stand a chance.
Yeah. What? Yeah, I know. Oh my God, that's so true. And this is suburban Atlanta. This is in southern Georgia.
Yeah, this isn't
Kind of
like the
crazy.
boonies. This
Yeah.
is like the suburban areas where like you think we have like good schools, but again, this is like a very. Let me also say, we had so middle school was also like we had Bible class where we were memorizing the Westminster Catechism, and you do. So, have you ever heard of a sword drill? This
No.
is so great. Okay, a sword drill is where you take your Bible, which is the sword of the spirit. It's like the Lord's words are your sword in the battle against evil.
Uh-huh.
And you put your hands on either side of it,
Uh-huh.
and your teacher says like a Bible verse, just like, okay, Isaiah 29:11. And the first person to race through their Bible and get to it wins. And they read the Bible verse out loud. And so they would like list these obscure,
Right.
random like Bible verses so that you would like, the more familiar you are, like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I know Isaiah is basically in the middle of the book. Or like,
Right.
I know, you know, Malachi is towards the end of the Old Testament, but it's
Right.
before the New Testament. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go this far through my Bible.
Yeah.
So those were like the drills we would do.
Yeah.
But then also there's a second layer because we would go to science class, which was basically also Bible class. So like I was being
Get your
taught
science
things.
books out.
I on John Oliver 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an episode about homeschooling, and they showed the biology textbook that homeschoolers sometimes use. That's like insane. And I was like, that's my middle school science textbook.
Oh,
Okay,
for
great.
real?
Yeah.
It's like a
And so
Christian bio. Oh my goodness.
they would teach things like, so you're going to go to public school for high school. Here's how to defend yourself against when they teach you about evolution, because obviously evolution is
Whoa.
wrong. So here's how you need to defend yourself. One, intellectually, and two, like you should probably be standing up in class and explaining why evolution is wrong to your teachers.
Whoa.
Like
Whoa.
very
Little
aggressive,
jihadists.
right? You're
Whoa.
like, that's not far off.
Right. Yeah, not espousing violence, but yeah.
Not to mention, well, that's what I mean. Like they say that they're not espousing violence, but are they? I
Yeah.
reread some of. Have you heard of the Left Behind books?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that's like an apocalypse, right? Type
This is
thing.
like this apocalyptic version of the Book of Revelation, where
Right.
like
Yes.
they take the Book of Revelation super literally. Everyone who's a Christian gets taken up into heaven, and then they're like, the book is about people who have converted to Christianity after that, and they're like fighting the Antichrist. These books,
That's a
they're
badass concept, actually. But
well, here's the thing. Like, I read all those books in middle school. They're like,
were
these
they
are
part
books
of
that are
it?
part of the.
Was that assigned reading?
It was not assigned
Oh,
reading, but it's like in that zeitgeist of this is the kind of stuff
right.
we support and the kind of like free time literature you should consume.
So like it
Those
was
books,
available to read in school.
the school library was around the corner from my mom's studio, and I would just after school all day spend the time in the library until the librarian had to lock up and go home.
But there were
And
real
so
books
like
there too?
there were, but like she would take, if there was an art book about like Renaissance art, then she would take a marker and like color in nude bodies from like a Renaissance painting. So like the Son of Man, like creation of Adam photo painting of them like touching fingers would be colored in with like underwear because you can't see Adam's penis. You know what I mean? And these Left Behind books were fucking bloodthirsty, man. Like I went back, I was like, oh, I don't remember a lot, and I would like flipped through, and it's like, here's the good news, folks. Because it's the Antichrist, we can stop pretending to give a shit about all these non-Christians. We are here to kill them.
Rape and
It
pillage.
is like blood soaked. These books are about them like just waging war on the
They're
Antichrist and
kid
all of
books?
his
They're
minions.
like
They're
preteen books or what?
they're like young adult. They're
Young
like,
adult novels. Okay.
yeah, it's like the
Oh,
equivalent of like a Tom Clancy book, but for
right.
like fundamentalist Christians.
Whoa.
And so like that's the kind of stuff that was just in our brain.
That's
Every time there
definitely
was
blood
a
belt.
whenever there was a presidential election, we would have a school mock election, and every single student would vote for the Republican except for like the one bad kid. And then they would like talk to that one bad kid of like, I remember my sister's class or the class ahead of her, one guy voted for like Clinton in the 96 election, and they were like, well, we need to explain to you why he's like the worst person we've ever met, you
Oh,
know. You
really?
know, like
Wait,
it
the
was
kid
just
that
this.
voted for Clinton got pulled aside and like re-educated?
Yeah, like I don't understand what the point
Oh,
of the
this
exercise
is now
was.
sounding like illegal, like borderline illegal. Are you allowed? Whoa.
Well, I mean, because it was a mock election, they can do whatever they
Yeah,
want.
I
It's
remember having, but I remember doing the exact same exercises. In, I'm also wondering, like, since you said the Underground Railroad thing, I'm wondering because I obviously remember learning that about that in school. Now I'm wondering, did we have some sort of similar exercise? I do remember the Underground Railroad always being like a very profound concept to learn about as a kid. But
well,
maybe,
it should be, but not like in a fun,
yeah, that's
cool way,
great.
but in
Dude.
a like, look
I
how
see,
desperate.
I see what their intent was. I hope, like,
Yeah,
what their intent was. But anyway,
and
um,
like I want to apply some like good faith to a lot of these people. Like the principal of the school was and is still a very close family friend. Like his daughter was David Mayo was my best friend, and his daughter was my other best friend.
okay.
I go on a yearly trip overseas with his son. Like, I love this family, and I give their dad a lot of credit for being like a great person. He officiated my wedding,
Uh-huh.
but like a lot of those teachers were like off the reservation, man.
Right. Yeah, I mean, but yeah, everyone's well intentioned, right? I think all human beings want the same thing, like peace and happiness for all. Everyone just have different avenues of how to get there. And if you're not thinking critically about your actions and thoughts, obviously things
Yeah.
can go awry. Um, what was the last thing you just said about the example you gave from school? Not from the Underground
The
Railroad.
election.
Oh, yes, the election thing. I remember going through that same exercise in my school, elementary and middle school. But I remember being a pretty pluralistic outcome in
Yeah.
my
No, not
suburban
here.
Atlanta, northern Florida. I remember I specifically remember Gore Bush mock
Yeah.
election in honors social studies, which probably
Right.
leaned more liberal in that area, and it being like a hot contested race. That's so
Nope.
interesting that at your Christian school, they're like, you weren't even it's like fucking Russia or so like Venezuelan election.
It seriously was like, yeah, you guys know what the right answer is, and we're just gonna verify that you know. Like, okay. Let me think of, is there anything else? A
Dude,
lot of middle
hey,
school was about like preparing you for all of the like attacks that were going to happen to you in high school. Like these non-Christians, they like want to harm you.
right.
Turns out that's not
Us
true.
versus them thing, yeah.
But like we were going in prepared, like we're going to battle. We're here to like go fight the good fight.
Right. Yeah, that's very, I mean, this jihadi type stuff. So that was till fifth grade.
That was like middle school, so like sixth through eighth grade.
Okay, so the whole thing was so perimeter had a K, it went K through 8.
It went first through eighth. I had to go to like some
Oh,
other
first through 8.
random weird like day school for kindergarten. I don't remember. I think my little sister didn't even go to kindergarten because it wasn't mandated at the time. I don't know if it is or
Their
not in
tiny little
Georgia, but
brains aren't ready for the indoctrination.
it was like a half day. So it's like you drop off your kid and then you can do what, like one thing, and then you have to pick them up again.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
So,
but
okay,
yeah,
so you
so
went there till 8. So then that's when I met David Mayo, who I didn't become super close with Mayo until college, but we went to high school
right.
together. And he started at my high school in ninth grade.
Yes.
Okay. And then where did you go to high school?
So I went to
South.
South Forsyth High School. There were two other people from my perimeter class that like went with me to South. We rarely saw each other. I mean, they were both really cool, and I really liked that I was like. And then there were a couple upperclassmen that I knew from perimeter. So like we had neighbors that had been to perimeter, and then were in high school with me, but they were upperclassmen.
So the perimeter high school, so just to get back to what you said a minute ago, it's like that's a significant part of the education there is you're going to high school, you won't have your perimeter Christian support system here anymore. Be
They're
prepared.
no longer going to be teaching you the truth. They're going to be teaching you what all of the like the world, capital world and like dark undertones,
Why didn't they
what
just
the
make it high
world
school?
wants to teach you. Probably funding. I don't know,
It's like
man.
an incredible abdication of duty if like we educated you, you tiny little precious souls for 7 years, and then it's like now we're sending you off to Satan's lair to be. It's weird.
I'm curious if it's partly because of legal requirements for a
Right?
school,
Yeah.
because you have to start meeting educational requirements of some kind.
Yeah.
Like a girl I know started teaching there, and I was like, how is this person qualified to be an educator?
Yeah. That's what I
And
was
I
gonna.
looked it up, and in a private elementary school, you basically don't have to have any
No,
qualifications.
you
So
don't.
like in public school, you have to be certified and have these educational backgrounds, but for them it was like whatever is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like I don't know if they start bumping up against that in high school or not.
I think that's the best explanation. Yeah, certain states charter schools can hire anyone they want off the street. You don't need like any credentials. When I started teaching, I didn't have any credentials. I just started teaching straight out of keg parties at UGA. Is
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, and I think that's either I think it's the fact because I was gonna ask how could they teach all like creationism and shit legally? Not I know it's a Christian school, but like at some point, isn't there some sort of objective academic standard that has to be met? So that's probably what it is because high school now there's gonna be actual people checking on academic progress. And then
Right.
the other thing is like it's going to be a lot harder to sell a lot of that stuff to 14 to 18-year olds than it is.
Yeah, you start to meet people and they like are not out to get you. They just want to be friends.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, but you're not a Christian. They're like, what are you fucking talking about? We're
Yeah.
like on the cross country team.
Yeah.
Like this isn't about that at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
Did your parents were your parents aware of like how like intense it was, or were they on board with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think they were not as aware. My sisters and I, we talk about this all the time. We get together and we're like, let's talk more about perimeter. Um, and like Susanna said in that episode, like, yeah, it still comes up in therapy. You know what I mean? Like, and I wasn't even a female. Like the women have, my sister has these like nightmares about being taught like there are side hug girls and then there are front hug girls. Do you want to be a side hug girl or a slutty front hug girl?
Well, I wasn't even sure which one was better. Which was better?
The front hug is way worse because you're pressing your whole body.
The best. What are you talking about?
And they were like,
"What a hug's for."
Teachers would say to them, like, "You're acting like a front hug kind of girl, and that's like really bad." Like so bad.
Dude,
so like,
yeah.
We were being taught like, yeah, if you ever touch your dick, you're the worst person alive. Like that's the worst thing you could possibly do.
Did you guys have explicit sex education? Like
no,
sex? Okay.
No. But also in high school, I didn't because my health teacher was the softball coach and he would spend the whole class on the phone with the other softball coach. And so I guess we were supposed to at some point, like all the other classes were getting like the slideshow of STDs, and we didn't get jack shit. We didn't get any sex ed.
Dude, I got sex ed every year from 5th grade on.
No, they had a couple times where they took the classes apart and talked about puberty.
Uh-huh.
And it was like you're going to start feeling things and those things are wrong. So like they wouldn't teach you like what sexual intercourse
Oh,
was,
oh,
but they would teach you that any sexual feelings are wrong.
whoa, dude. How do people
So
see like what kind of fucking
dude,
psychological issues that's gonna cause? That's crazy, man.
we had we started having overnight field trips once a year in 5th grade, and so the 7th grade one we went to Tybee Island to learn about like the Georgia like coastal islands, whatever they're called, like um defensive islands of some, I don't know,
Barrier
like
islands.
barrier islands. That's what we're talking about. And on the bus ride back, we were in these like, you know, 15-seater vans, and my
Hand job time.
van, I have no idea how, I don't know who was driving our van, but whatever parent volunteer was, I guess, just not paying attention to us, because it was like boys and girls, and we were trying to talk about like what our understandings of sexuality were, and it was embarrassing.
You guys
We
all like
didn't
all got
know.
together, going like, dude, they're not listening. Like, what the fuck?
One
I'm
of the
coming
kids
in my bed
asked,
every night.
there's like the bad kid, and one of them was like, so is he like a virgin? And when they asked that question, all of us kind of stopped because we realized we didn't know that what a virgin really was. We've been hearing about the Virgin Mary a lot, but I remember being like, so what exactly is that again? And the person answered, it's someone who's had sex before. And I was like, okay, then no, he's definitely not a virgin. Don't worry about that. And like we explained how like for boys, whenever we're walking between classes with our binder like in front of our groin, it's because we have boners. And they were like, what? And like they were like, it's the same thing with when we cross our arms, it's because our nipples are crazy. It was like the most sexual experience I could have ever imagined.
Yeah,
Just
also
like
the most educational experience you've ever had. You guys are finally learning something.
we finally were learning. So it's like it's so embarrassing that it took us like doing something that was literally bad. If someone found out, we would be in trouble, like
Right.
in detention. Talk to your parents, like, and we were just trying to get any information other than like, remember the feelings in your body are wrong.
Yeah.
So
An
like
honest conversation. And it's like it's punished. It's condemned. It's
it
crazy.
wasn't until high school, it wasn't until college that I broke out of this cycle of like not masturbating for forever, trying not to try, and then like masturbating and
And
being
then
like guilt
yeah.
cycle and shame and terrible, and then like I go through these cycles that would be like months long,
You're like an
and then
addict
finally
who
one day
relapsed.
being like, what the fuck is this? Is fine, like this is not a problem.
Dude, even me, and I wasn't raised in a like I wasn't raised. I mean, I guess I kind of was. I was raised in a religious household, actually. But the
Sure.
faith my mom raised us in, the Baha'i faith, was not judgmental in that way at all. My mom
Yeah,
told me not to have sex in her house. She told me not to drink alcohol or do drugs, and that was
which
it.
is fair.
She never talked to me about masturbation, which, like, I think in hindsight was the right. I think she handled it the right way. Like, she knew we
Yeah,
were getting educated in school. She knew I hung out with a bunch of boys and friends in the neighborhood. I think she handled everything the right way because I never felt guilt. I guess I did because I grew up in a Christian society.
yeah. The society was really
Yeah.
geared towards that.
Because I do remember when I started beating off thinking that feeling guilty, like I'm doing
Yeah,
something wrong. And I remember one time, I don't know if I've ever said this before, because even it's such a stupid thing, but like even now I was about to say it, there is like shame associated with it. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to say this. Remember one time I beat off on like Christmas Eve or Christmas.
oh
I wasn't
no,
raised Christian. I wasn't raised Christian. I mean, I was raised with the teachings of Christ, or like he was this guy, or whatever. I wrote the
right.
respect, whatever. But same with anyway. But like we did celebrate Christmas, so it was an important holiday, and I knew where it came from, and I did have like a religion. I had a very religious connection to it, and I went.
Right.
I like couldn't look myself in the mirror for the next 6 months after rubbing one out on Christmas Eve.
Oh
So,
man, that's
so,
tough. Oh
so
boy.
you're fucking that's an insane way to begin high school. So you get to high
Yeah.
school and what's
So I
like
get to high
are you
school.
scared? Are y'all all scared? Like graduating 8th grade?
So I was excited because my sister, I thought that anything that she did was the greatest thing in the world. I thought that she was a brilliant genius, and she did all this acting in high school. She was the prom queen.
Oh,
But I mean, not because she was like popular and cool. It was like she was just so cool to, she was so great to everyone.
yeah,
Like
that's how ours.
every little circle of people she was on board with. And so I was getting to high school like excited because I felt like she had done a really cool job in high school. And that was, what I was going to do.
Mhm.
So I joined like the cross country team. I did FCA. It was huge at my school.
At our school was
Like
too.
we would have like 300 people every Friday for like basically a church service.
Yeah, so FCA, for those that aren't initiated, the uninitiated, is what? It's Fellowship of Christian Athletes, right?
Yes.
We didn't have to be an athlete, but
No.
but I remember going to a couple of middle school, and it did seem like it leaned very like, at least in middle school, like popular crowd, athlete, cheerleader, football type thing. At
We
least,
had a number for generations. RFCA had been influenced by the perimeter crowd. So, like, when my sister was in high school, the girl running it a couple years ahead of her was like a perimeter church person. And, like, so there's a lot of still like continuity there. And so those were like my big events, like freshman year. My middle school or my high school was being made up of two middle schools that fed in.
right?
So like there was Vickery Creek and South Middle. And
Yeah,
so when I got to high school, everyone who didn't know me just assumed I came from the other high
right,
school.
right, right.
So like I didn't know anyone for a while. Like I think it was the whole first semester at lunch, I sat with the special education students because like
I think you
they
said
didn't.
this at the bachelor party or something.
I don't think so. I
Oh,
haven't really talked about that, but
no,
like
no.
I would just sit and
Someone else has
read.
told me this recently.
I
Anyway.
would sit and read, and they didn't. I mean, a lot of them weren't really verbal, and they wouldn't really talk. So I would just sit there and read, and then their job was halfway through lunch, they would go collect all the trash.
It's like, I think this kid's in the wrong class. He's reading like War and Peace and shit.
So they would get up and like start
You like
collecting
go back
trash,
to
and I just
class with
keep
them, they're doing the
reading.
alphabet.
So it took me until second semester when I had like made friends through classes to like start sitting with like just other people in my regular classes. But like I didn't care, like it didn't bother me to be kind of like outside. And then like I loved the cross country team. It was a bunch of weirdos. I
Yeah,
felt like kind of a weirdo. Like
yeah,
it was a good group of like fun misfits.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there wasn't a lot of hierarchy. We had like wrestlers who were trying to cut weight.
yeah.
We had soccer players trying to stay in shape for the spring semester. We had like this weird eclectic bunch. And then it was like the kids who all take German as their language, like that's a very specific group of people, right? Like, exactly what I mean when I say
What's a
that.
type
Like
A? A type A 16-year-olds.
the ones who like they're like, that I'm different than everyone else, right? I take German, not Spanish or French. And you're like, I get it. Like, you're
My
different.
buddy Hunter, who's been on this podcast too, was that fucking guy. He was my closest friend growing up. I probably mentioned him at the bachelor party. He was that fucking guy. You actually look, I did. You guys are like kind of fucking
Oh, is
dumb.
that the guy you said I look like? Oh, man.
Yeah, he looks like you. You guys look at each other too. He was that guy. He was that guy, fucking the outsider.
I'll have to listen to his podcast
Oh,
next.
I'm not taking Spanish or French. It's the language of commerce.
So,
You
like,
know that 30% of global business is conducted in German.
if only we had Mandarin, I would take Mandarin German hybrid. But, like, I started to just really enjoy, like, I was in the AP group. There was a feeder. I didn't know about this until I got to high school. We had an international baccalaureate class. So it was like just emerging. Like my sister didn't have a class that was able to do it. And so like a good portion of my friends were from the IB crowd. And then the rest of them were mostly the like AP and like cross country people, but also like I was friends with everyone. Like I took the bus, which I loved. I was the first stop, so I would get on the very back of the bus. That's also where all the like bad kids would go to like do drugs and talk about sex.
Yeah.
So that was like trying to learn
Yeah,
You know,
get
like
educated.
again, I'm just sitting there with a fucking book, just minding my own business. But then like if something comes up that I've never heard of, I'm like, well, I should
Virgin,
listen,
virgin. What's a virgin? What's a virgin?
figure out what this is. Yeah, exactly. Like what words are the swear words? Okay, great. So like through high school, I did a bunch of like summer programs too. I did
So
this one my
you were good at school all throughout.
yeah.
Okay, and you enjoyed
I
it. Sounds like.
I loved school. I didn't think of myself as being good at math or science, but I was okay at it. Like I
Was
didn't
there any
take AP
sort?
calculus.
Was there any sort of academics at perimeter? Like, were there honors classes tagged at perimeter? Guess
This
not.
is terrible to say. I think what was really happening, because we weren't big enough for like a gifted program or anything
Right,
like that. But they would in middle school, they kind of separated out the homeroom classes into like the fast math class and the
right,
slow math
right,
class.
right,
So they would never say that out loud, but it was like if you looked around, you're like, I think we're the
right.
smart class and they're the
Okay.
less smart class.
Yeah.
Like,
What about like
but it was like,
eighth grade, where it's fucking obvious?
yeah, I mean, I think we took different types of math. Like,
Because by eighth
so
grade, dude, you've got some kids that haven't learned dick that are
yeah,
like can barely add and subtract, and then you've got geniuses who are like should be taking college level math, but I guess maybe you're selecting from a
it
super
was a
rigid population. There's less
it was a
disparity.
very small population. I think we probably had 36 people in
Right.
our eighth grade class,
So you're
maybe
probably being
less.
held back, like from academic development. You probably were being limited.
Some people were taking when they got to high school, when they got to ninth grade, they were taking pre-algebra, and some of us were taking algebra 2.
Yeah.
So they must have been teaching the different classes different things, but that was
Right.
never made clear to us.
So you
So
took
like,
algebra 2 freshman year of high school.
yeah,
Okay, so
and then
that's the fastest you could go.
trig, and then
Cal.
something, and then calculus. Yeah, I didn't take AP calculus though.
But you were in AP classes. Okay, so you were good at
Yeah,
school.
I thought about trying to see if I could switch into the IB classes, but I was so far behind because I didn't know about it really until sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a bunch of French classes to catch up,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, "We can't like take you in halfway through."
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up basically auditing a couple of their classes because I'd run
Oh,
out of other classes to take, and so they were like, if you want to take, like, I took IB theory of knowledge, which was like the coolest class of all time.
what is
I
that?
still,
Philosophy? What the fuck is that?
it's like philosophy and like, how do we know what we know? How do we communicate what we know? And like, very kind of ethereal. You have to have a really good teacher. And I still, every time I'm back home in Atlanta, I meet up with that teacher and like go to his house and like hang out for a couple hours and catch up.
Oh, wow,
Like,
cool.
it was amazing. I did. Do you know anyone that did GHP, the like the governor's honors
Yeah,
program?
yeah.
So I think
You didn't do that shit.
Blair Munhoven is the guy I knew from
Yeah, Blair
Centennial.
Run. I was gonna say I didn't know you knew Blair. Yeah, I know Blair.
Yeah,
I've heard of that. He's always off at like summer camp and shit.
yeah. So I did shit like that. Like I
Okay.
went to this like young leaders thing that was pulling from mostly South Georgia schools. So it was like me and then a bunch of kids from like, Valdosta and just ran like towns in Georgia I'd never heard of. And we did like leadership things for a couple weeks. And then I did GHP between junior and senior year, which is like basically a Georgia like breeding program. Like they just try and get these smart nerds together and they're like, hey, don't you want to stay in Georgia and like fuck each other and give us smart kids? Because like everyone left GHP dating someone. And these were like, we were not hot people. We were
Right.
dorks, like they just put
You guys should
every
start
dork,
fucking.
the top dorks from every school and just put us together. So like even I left GHP dating someone. It like did not last long because the flaw in the plan is that these kids are also like trying to be top performers everywhere. So like we didn't have time to even date.
Yeah.
So like it didn't work out.
Right.
But
So like, what are you like 16?
so yeah, I think I was 16, maybe just turned 17. I don't know, but it was like it was super fun. At the time, I'm already thinking like in fifth grade doing the Civil War, I learned that everyone cool in the Civil War went to West Point. And so like that's on my radar. my parents' general rule for college for us was like, you can either stay in state for the Hope Scholarship, or you can get scholarships outside the state. It's up to you, but like that's how college is getting paid for. Like we don't have a
Thanks.
college fund.
Thanks for the permission to get a scholarship.
Yeah, exactly. It was like we can maybe pay
So
you
nothing is what you're saying.
like we can pay you room and board if like you want to go somewhere else, but you better figure it out. It's like my sister went to Webster University in St. Louis on a theater scholarship.
Okay.
So they would
Older
like help
sister.
her out with little things, but like she had to pay her way through scholarships. And so for me, it was like, well, West Point is fully funded. It's like a fully taxpayer funded education. So like, why would I not do that? So a lot of my like effort in high school was kind of off in that direction. So I was on the FCA leadership team, and I don't know, I ran for student government at some point. But like, you know how some schools student government is like super important and they do shit? Ours was not. We like had a couple meetings and didn't do anything. I don't even know why we did it. But
Because
then
you're in the West Point.
I started doing mock trial, and mock trial was a blast. It was basically the main season for it was like between cross country and track. And so I just started sophomore year, and we were pretty good. We were the state runners up at least once, and we were always like in the running for like the state championship. And it was a blast. Um, but as all this is going on, I'm starting to have this like religious, the word I used with David and Corey in 2014 was crisis, but I don't know that crisis is even the right word. So I'm on the FCA leadership team. We have this other Bible study we called Fish Club, because you know the like Jesus fish was named after that. So
Were
I'm
you
like
still going? Were
doing,
you going to like Sunday service? Like go church on Sundays?
look, at my peak, here's what we were doing. Sunday morning with the family at church. Sunday afternoon, I'm at youth group at the church. So I've driven back to church by then.
Whoa.
Monday afternoon, I'm doing an FCA leadership team that I'm running. On Tuesday night, I'm going back to my church for their singles night. Even though they were begging high schoolers not to come, it was like the cool, hip thing to do is go to like the young person church.
Wait,
So
singles night for high school kids?
not singles night. It was like the singles ministry. It was the like college and young adult
Okay.
ministry, and a bunch of high schoolers that were like really dedicated, we would go to that. And I remember it was right at the end of my senior
For
year. They
what?
were
To
like,
try to fuck or what? Like,
no,
okay.
to like to have a better understanding of like the battles that were going to be facing us as young Christians in the
Oh,
future.
okay.
So that's Tuesday night. Wednesday morning
There's
is
nothing
Fish
like
Club.
seedy going on with like these 25-year-old dudes fucking high school chicks or
Look, I was the most naive person alive, so
right,
probably, I don't
right,
know.
right.
Like I didn't know shit, man. And so Thursday might have been like free of any specific biblical thing, but then Friday
Whoa.
morning is FCA. So like almost every day of the week, I've got a major church event.
This is what year, age?
This is like junior and senior year of high school.
Whoa. Okay.
I'm
Damn.
also doing cross country. I'm also doing mock trial. Senior year, I didn't do track. I did dance company instead, which my sister had founded in the theater department, a dance company. And they were like, we are desperate for boys. The class ahead of me had a bunch of guys from the theater group that would do it. And they lost all of them when they graduated. And so I joined to be like, I don't have any dance skills, but I'm on board. Like, I didn't love track in the way that I love cross country. And so like I just did that instead. So like I'm hyper involved in school.
Was there any social fallout for being on dance company? It's like
No, they loved it, man. I was trying to make it cool again. You know what I mean? Like I gave a pitch during one of the performances about how we needed to recruit young men. And because at that point I'd been accepted to West Point, the thing that I did was like, all right, I've got to, get ready for my college experience. And so I'm going to do this next thing, just doing push ups. So I gave this speech about how they needed guys while doing continuous push-ups for a minute. And so it was like, you know, if you think you don't have time, like, trust me, this is really cool. It's like 3 guys and 25 girls. Like, come on, you're stupid if you're not doing this. Uh, but so as I'm leading this FCA group, I'm thinking to myself, like, I've been taught that like my faith needs to be really well defended, right? Like you need to really understand where it comes from. And so I'm reading the Bible systematically, first chapter to last chapter. So I think in high school, 3 times I started from the beginning and read to the end, every verse, every chapter. But on
Read the
the
Bible
second,
front to back multiple times.
multiple times.
Okay.
Here's the problem. American evangelical Christianity has a lot embedded in it that has nothing to do with the Bible, right? Like it's a very
in the Bible,
cultural...
in the Bible that you were reading.
Yeah. So I'm reading an NIV Bible, right?
What's that?
And
say?
the New International Version. That's like the translation. So I'm not reading a King James. I'm reading like a Bible I can understand.
Right.
And as I read through it, and I'm thinking to myself, like, as a junior in high school, well, I know that sex is wrong, but like, I didn't really see that spelled out, you know, like there were a couple things, like there's a verse that says flee sexual immorality, or like verses in the Old Testament about how like homosexuals should be stoned. And I was like, I don't understand how that fits in. And
But these
also
are just
like,
like singular verses in a book of 1,000, 1,500.
right. And so I'm thinking like the context doesn't make sense from what I've been taught of how I should be living my life. So the second time through, I'm like hunting for the specifics. At the same time, outside of that, I'm a person who's like really approachable. So like a bunch of my friends are coming out to me. So a bunch of my friends are coming to me being like, "Hey Marshall, like I'm gay and I don't know what to do." And I'm,
Whoa! In high school.
oh yeah. And
And
so
these
I'm
are these
saying
Christian kids or all walks of life?
all kids. All, so
Oh,
everyone's coming to me to say like, "Hey, this weekend I went to a party and I got really drunk and I feel really bad about it. What should I do?" Or like, "I made out with my friend. I don't know what to do about it because I don't want to like date them. What do I do?" I don't know what to do, and I don't have any like
well, what about the gay
answers.
stuff? What? No, that's not gay stuff.
What I'm saying is like, you know, I don't think that's a problem. I think that God loves you and you're fine. And
Well,
I'm
people
so
are
I'm
telling you that are high school boys coming to you and telling you like, "Hey, I had sex with a dude last weekend."
no, they're telling me that they're gay secretly and they don't know what to do about it.
Okay,
Girls are
it was
telling
heavy,
me,
but I'm wondering like, whoa, what would you do if someone?
yeah,
Okay,
girls are telling me that they got drunk. Guys are telling me that they masturbated. Gay
okay,
guys are telling me that they're gay. You know,
right,
like
right.
it's all coming in. And my whole thing is that, like, well, okay, my read of the Bible here is that Jesus loves you no matter what. So, like, that's my answer. Is like, I don't. That's fine. Like, we
Oh, you
love
would
you.
like
It's fine.
positioned yourself as like a fucking clergyman.
But so I also am like, okay, I got to hunt for what the answer really is
Yeah,
beyond that in the
for your
Bible, and
flock.
it's not in there, man. Like,
Yeah.
I was looking for examples of monogamous married couples. So I had
That's
been
it. That
taught
you're looking for examples of monogamous married couples in the Bible.
in the Bible. So I had looked up like, okay, so what's the deal? Why does everyone in this Christian circle, why does everyone hate gay marriage? And I Googled it and they were like, because of Adam and Eve. I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm like Googling, okay, but what really, what's the other support? And it was like, no, because God made Adam and Eve and said that they're married. And so that's what marriage is. I was like, well, that's fucking ridiculous. And so then I was like, well, let's look for the other monogamous couples, right? So like King David, bunch of wives, bunch of concubines, sleeps with this married woman, which like there's a very strong argument for like raping this married woman, has her husband killed in battle so that it's not discovered that he's had this affair. Like, okay, and he's supposed to be like the coolest guy in the Bible.
Yes,
Okay, what about
he's a protagonist.
he's the best guy. He's the one that you're like everyone wants to be. That's why David's name is David. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and so I'm looking through. I can name one other couple in the Bible that is a married monogamous couple Their names are Ananias and Sapphira. They're in the book of Acts, which is the New Testament. It's like after the Gospels, it's the story of like the early church and how they all like got recruited and converted and stuff like that. The early church was pooling everyone's money. Sounds very socialist if you ask me,
Yeah.
but and Ananias and Sapphira had sold property and then didn't tell everyone that they'd sold property, so they kept the money for themselves. So God struck them with lightning and killed them.
Whoa. So the only
That's the only monogamous
murder.
couple in the Bible.
Whoa, dude. I've never read the fucking Bible, so this is all like fucking shocking to me. I didn't assume that like it was like on every page, don't suck dick or whatever, but I assumed it was like some kind of repeating theme.
No, there's some verses here and there. They're like, yeah, remember how this is 2500 BC? Fuck those gay people. Right. It was like, okay, well, there's all this stuff in the New Testament about how like, don't worry about the old laws. Like Jesus frees you from those laws. So I'm looking in the New Testament and there's like nothing. There's some stuff that's like, remember to be like cool. Like don't be a dick and like don't be immoral. And I was like, well, what does immoral mean? Right. So I'm looking through to try and find what's the definition of immoral. And like I'm coming from this very like rules-based, actions-based, right and wrong, and I just couldn't find it.
Dude, I'm gonna really show my ignorance here.
No, please.
What is the Bible then? If it's not like I was about to ask, so there's not like some sort of like instruction manual for how to be a good person, like go to college. Like I know there's like 10 commandments, but there's nowhere it says like get married, have a wedding, have sex with this one woman, and make kids with just this one woman. Don't use protection. Like I assume there's like chapters of how to be of right and wrong. What is most stories?
Most of that is the cultural interpretations over hundreds and hundreds of years of stories and explanations of what those stories are and what they mean. So
what is the actual content itself? It's stories of people.
So the first five books,
like theatrical stories, like there's a problem to solve, like a kind of like a plot development, separate stories, and are they disparate? Are they connected? What is
in the New Testament? Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit.
Okay.
So in the New Testament, the first 4 books are the story of Jesus's life. So they're like explanations of what he did, stories he told, people he healed, or sermons he gave, and things like that. The next book is about the story of the early church, like after Jesus has died and risen and ascended to heaven, here's how people became Christians and spread the gospel. Okay. The rest of the New Testament is basically letters from the Apostle Paul or other apostles to these churches to say like, hey, church in, Corinth, for the Corinthian church, I was visiting you. I noticed there were problems. Here's what those problems are and how you should solve them. So imagine getting a letter from your friend that says like, man, you need to get your shit together. You don't know what you're doing. And I hated the way you left your last job. You need to do better. And then someone taking that letter and reading it and saying like, okay, so we need to be better at our jobs and not leave our jobs poorly and get our lives together. And then how do you interpret that for your life? These are targeted letters that we're all now applying to like
all of humanity,
all the church and stuff like that. We're going to get over this hump in a minute and I'm going to be able to talk better.
Also, if you don't get over it, we're actually not that far in. I thought we were farther in because
I'm a stay-at-home dad. I don't talk a lot. So it like,
yeah, if your voice doesn't come back, if you're free, we can do a part 2 and another weekend. But we're only an hour in. Dude,
I'm having a blast. I'm having a great
time. I'm enjoying it too. I'm like I said, I enjoy this one in particular because it's all novel to me. Okay.
So this starts for me.
We'll attempt to keep going. If your voice fades, then we can pick up a part 2. But yeah, keep going. You're still in high school and you're on it's good Bible talk right now.
So it starts for me this whole like journey of like, okay, I don't understand the translation from the Bible to what the church is telling me. I'm going to keep doing what the church is telling me because they either know more than I do, or there's like, it's a safe option. One way I described it, this is embarrassing, but like, I was doing all this because I'm getting up and giving speeches to hundreds of students every week. And so I didn't want to say anything that was going to be like retroactively think, oh, that was bad theology or like bad understanding. So I'm saying general things like love each other, care about each other. My favorite part of the Bible is someone straight up asked Jesus, okay, you're telling us all this disparate information about how to live our lives. What's the real answer? What are the important rules to follow? And he says, love God and love each other. Every other rule falls under those two things. So if that's what you're doing the right thing. So that becomes my lens for like, okay, so having sex frivolously is probably not helpful if I'm not loving someone through it, or if it's just selfish. That's a rule I can kind of understand and get behind a little bit. But like, I'm also dealing with, how do you break into your own understanding of what that means? Like, what does loving someone mean? There's not an objective standard for it. There's doing your best to love people. And so
Can I just jump in real quick? What you just said, I'm not even kidding you. What you just said about love God, love each other, everything else falls under that. An example being having frivolous sex with a bunch of people if you don't love them and it's just selfish. That was the most like influential piece of religious advice I've ever been given. Like that made more sense to me than anything I've ever heard or read. I'm not going to say more than, I'm going to say as much, if not more than anything I've ever heard or read religiously. When you just said that, I had a giant mirror in my face and it was like, oh, maybe you should like listen to, I don't know, higher powers or something. What you just said affected me in a very simplistic and fucking profound way. Wow. Very
well,
nice.
I mean, kind of, because I don't even believe that necessarily anymore.
Yeah, but just that
but conceptually, I love it.
Right. There's no eternal truth or like, whatever truth, but if at the very least, you just caused a inner dialogue, introspection in a way that I don't feel very often. So, yeah. Oh, hope you got that.
It wasn't for me.
I don't know if I ever got that. Anyway, this is what I said.
There you are.
Okay. Yeah. What I said was, there's no eternal or objective truth. Like, even if that isn't like one of the commandments or whatever, whatever it is, you still cause me to introspect in a way that I don't feel very often, just with that little, all these rules fall under love each other. Are your actions loving or are they for your own selfish pleasure? Whoa, that's like, oh shit. I consider myself a critically thinking guy. I'm like, whoa, it's profound. Yeah.
I'm certain that people I grew up with would say that I'm not a Christian anymore.
Right.
I don't know if I am or if I'm not, but my general guidelines for how to be a decent person fall there. Like, if I'm trying to act in love, and that can mean different things. Like, I am a soldier. Like, I have gone to war. That means violence. Yeah. But that still means like there's a baseline understanding of love and attempting to make the world a better place through caring about the humanity and dignity of other people and translating that into the actions that I take. So I don't hear a lot of people who are from the world I grew up in that I'm like, yeah, I respect where you're coming from. But when I listened to like David's podcast with you, his explanation of faith was like, yeah, I can get behind that. But that meant that like I'm going to college as someone who intellectually believes that like it's okay to have sex with people, but still emotionally, I was not ready, had no idea how that would even work, how to just emotionally get there, let alone the idea of like attracting someone to me. Like I, am not someone that people are just like sprinting to date. So I've got all this under the surface and I don't know if I can even tell anyone, like,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know how heretical it sounds. Like I don't see a lot of what you're talking about in the Bible. I see a lot of value in it in the Bible, but like I don't get this world.
Mm-hmm.
So high school ends, West Point starts in the summer. Like you don't have summers off at West Point, so you start at the end of June. So I had like a couple weeks to like get my head around like, all right, your whole life's about to change and off you go.
I'm gonna ask
David,
one thing here real quick.
yeah.
You kind of touched on it just a second ago with being a Christian and being a soldier and all that. But can you dive in real quick? And I know you're a kid at this time, but like and this is something that's always blown my mind with the military and Christian or religion and how there's such deep overlap between those two sections of society. It's like what what are we doing here? It's like the mass murder group and the like everyone group on the same group. What the fuck? The same, the same thing on the other side with extremist Islam or anything. So did that ever occur to you in your head that like the military at the end of the day is an institution of taking life, and religion ostensibly or hopefully is an institution for promoting love and peace, the opposite? I don't know. Did you ever think about that in
Oh
high
yeah.
I assume you did because you sound like you
Yes.
were fucking thinking.
So there are two kind of branches to it. The one, which is not the branch that I was following, is really the concept that there's a huge overlap between American soldiers and Christian nationalists, because evangelical Christianity teaches basically that Jesus has picked out America to be the greatest country in the world, that America is going to restore Israel to its like position on the world stage, which is a critical part of Jesus returning to earth, right? So like the Lord is using our country specifically to usher in his return. I think that's
great
lunatic.
marketing, dude. That's
fucking great marketing. And because 9/11, there's so much religion charged with it, there is a huge section of like Christian military people that's like, well, we've got to go defeat, the Satan esque kind of enemy. These, Islam is the enemy of our Lord, instead of it being like, hey, we're all people of the book here, or hey, everyone's trying to find truth. Maybe there's more than just like this specific literal cultural definition of Christianity, like that. Like, no, 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 no. We're crusaders here to fight the good fight. That was not my vision of it.
Okay.
My vision of it was more along the lines of like an honorable thing to do. So another thing Jesus says is the definition of love is to lay down your life for your brother. Like that's what love is to sacrifice yourself for other people. And that means like sacrificing your time, sacrificing your investment, your, attention and care, but also like to its extreme, like I will sacrifice my life for other people. And so for me, 9/11 happens in 8th grade.
Which you were already in before that.
I'm already on a trajectory to be in the army.
Yeah.
And it says to me, like, being in the army is the way you defend the people that you care about, and that you say, whatever is trying to hurt you, I would rather step in the way and fight that fight instead of you, like, and so there's a sense that it's not about taking other people's lives. It's about defending all the other people from, people that are trying to kill everyone else.
Right.
So that's how it kind of can fit. And that is still outside of any kind of faith conversation. That's how it feels to me now. Like my job is regrettably to be involved in violence, but not anymore. I'm retired now, but to, be a person who's willing to fight the people who are trying to kill women and children. fight outside their borders, like oppress other people. Like if I can free the oppressed, even if that includes violence, I will fight to free the oppressed. So like if I'm involved in keeping a girls' school open in my province because the only way to keep that school open is to protect them and keep fighting the enemy so that they don't shut down the school and kill all the teachers, that is worth it to me. Because the only hope for Afghanistan right now is like women. And if women are educated and women can start turning the tide, because like they spent all the time under the Taliban being barred from any education, and having women like in college, in the everyday community that can read, that can write, that can speak, is such a huge game changing deal for that country. And like this is getting ahead of the story and everything, but like obviously Afghanistan did not end well. Like the government of Afghanistan is the Taliban. And the question in my mind is always going to be, did we spend enough time teaching girls to read? Was 20 years of education and not security, but relative security enough that one day this generation is going to help change things? And I don't know. I'm not that hopeful, but like that's something I can get behind. I'm really lucky that I didn't have to go to Iraq. That's a way shadier, confusing, like, why are we here? Are these people like who's oppressing whom here? Like the Taliban is so cartoonishly bad that it's like pretty easy to be like, yeah, the bad guys here are the ones that are murdering women, oppressing children, and believe that dancing is a crime. Like it's pretty easy. So I'm just lucky that I had that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were gonna get, or if this even still, but I guess we'll just do it if we are gonna get into like the geopolitical aspect of it. But let's just take Afghanistan, kind of what you just said there. So based on your experience in Afghanistan, you think that mission was a noble one or a right-minded and directed one, and that based what you saw on the ground, there was a justifiable enemy to fight there?
Yeah, I think that it was the right war. I think that 9/11 required a response of some kind. Like Al Qaeda was like, we want to fucking end your country. And it makes sense to me to have a military response to that. And the Taliban being so like genuinely just oppressively evil was something worth fighting against.
Right.
I think that by the time I got there, it was too late.
What time were
If
you get there?
my first deployment was 2011, so by then all of the decisions about how we were going to fight the war had been made. Like what we should have been doing way back when, and again, I'll talk about this way more later, but like if you want a country to like stand itself up and self-actualize, you can't just try and force it to be like you. Like
Right.
you can't turn Afghanistan into the United States. That's so stupid.
First date. It's fucking, yeah. What we do.
And so while I'm still in high school, the US government is like, here's the constitution that you're writing, and
Right.
it's such a good constitution and it's so good.
Right.
And like if you're an Afghan leader, you're looking at that being like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, do you even know who we are?
Right.
And they're like,
You
no,
don't.
and we're not.
No, we don't. But I'm telling you, it's working out great over here.
Trust me, like you're gonna love this.
It's like being a missionary, man. It's like trying to convert a bunch of savages to Christianity.
Like what the fuck were we thinking? And so when I'm there, and I'm there in 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2015, and like we should be saying to ourselves, like, how do we hand over this war the way Afghans fight, instead of we're going to teach you how to fight like we do so that when we leave you can fight like us? Well, of course that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. Like they don't fight like we do. They don't have the resources we do. Mm-hmm. There's a reason that like they have fought differently for generations, and the inability to recognize that is what made the British lose in the 1890s and made the Soviets lose in the 1980s, and what makes us lose in the 2020s. Like if you're unwilling to understand the culture that you're in, that's fucking on us. And so as a lieutenant, as a captain, I can be there saying like, hey, we can't teach them like written doctrine and say that we did the war right. We have to learn what they want to do and enable that. Like, but by then it's way too late. It's generations too late to fix the problems that were in like 2004 and 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention that like the Iraq war made Afghanistan so much worse,
Right.
both from a we didn't invest the right people in Afghanistan at the time, and then also building this international group of fighters that learned how to fight against us that could go between different countries and keep fighting. If we had the enemy that we did in 2004, because like '01 to '04 were like great years to feel like an American that did the right thing in Afghanistan.
Right.
Like
All the
we
low
won that war.
fruit.
It was great. And then we like handwrite their constitution, and from then on we were fucked. Like
Right. As soon as you start trying to implement, as soon as you start trying to implement governance and govern a fucking
yeah, like you can't teach a Central Asian tribal community that American democracy is their future.
and that was
That's
essentially
so
the
stupid.
approach, right? Was your take
Yeah,
was you're trying to implement a republic, a democratic republic on top of a bunch of tribes.
yeah. Like we're trust me, you're gonna love this like universal suffrage. The whole nation is gonna vote for a president.
You could be a
And they're like,
congressman, bro.
what are you fucking talking about? Like we I remember as a second lieutenant, I had to keep a list of all the government officials in our province. And I was filling out the list and I was like, hey, I don't have the judges. They're like 3 positions for provincial judges. Do we have their names? And I was told, like, yeah, they've all been assassinated. So we're waiting for someone to pick out, like, someone to be willing to take it. And I was like, well, so how do they solve governance problems here? And like, oh, well, the Taliban does that. They sit down because what they wanted to do was sit down with this family and this family, and they say, hey, you've got a disagreement about where your property line is. We're gonna figure out using this like ancient tribal system which of you we think is right. We're gonna beat the shit out of the other one, and then you're gonna go about your days. And both families would be like, yeah, it makes sense to us. We've been doing that for thousands of years. Perfect. Instead, our government's like, no, 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 you got to take them to the provincial capital. They're going to have a lawyer and go to court. And then the judge is going to like hear the evidence and like sort it out. Like, of course, that's not going to work.
So
Like,
they're
are you
trying to
kidding me?
this whole time they're trying to. I should know this. Once again, talk about feeling ignorant. Like they're trying to set everything up from the ground floor, from
Yeah.
neighborhood schools to municipal judicial systems, local
Yes.
law enforcement, all the way up to a national Congress,
100%.
presidency. They're trying to build a mini America in the middle of the fucking desert with a bunch of people that are living in a civilization from 1,000 years ago.
Being led by a bunch of people who are just unbothered by the idea that they don't know the culture and aren't interested in learning.
Right.
You know, like I had, we're getting so far ahead of the game, but like generals saying like, well, I was in Iraq once. Like, bro, this is not Iraq. These are wholly different cultures. Like, if you're gonna come here thinking, well, I was in Iraq in 2006, that's not going to translate to Afghanistan in 2016. Like, this is a whole different ballgame, man.
Right.
So,
and at the time, they're running a totally separate. Well, the time you're there, they're running a totally separate operation in Iraq.
Yeah.
And is that? Are you noticing? I don't know how like bigger perspective or involved you, but like that's clearly like going to like spread things too thin, right? Are you feeling that? Or is there discussion about that? Is there like inter-military rivalry? Like,
let's get into that after I talk about college.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's do that. Okay. Yeah. Timeline for it.
Good prediction.
So, I leave high school. David Mayo is going to go to the Citadel. And so, like, that's another like weird place to go to college. So I feel like I've got someone else that's going to be like going through it at the same time.
And you and Mayo are, what's y'all's relationship through high school?
So I didn't appreciate this until a couple years ago. We had very different high school experiences. Like I, we stayed good friends. We'd see each other from time to time, but we weren't like in each other's day to day lives. Um, and as far as I was concerned, high school was a fucking blast. Like there were just a million people that I could love and care about from a million different like backgrounds and places. I had my burnout friends, I had my cross country friends, I had my smart friends, I had my theater friends. I kind of had popular friends, but they were mostly like the smart popular people. Like it was just a whole world fertile with people that you could like give a shit about. And
Yeah.
I was naive enough that people they were happy to confide in me. They knew I wouldn't judge them, but they also didn't have to like bring me along for the ride if anything got weird. Like
Right.
I went to a prom like after party at a lake house in Lake Lanier, and like I didn't even see anyone drinking or doing drugs there. There were like half the party was people drinking and doing drugs, but they were so kind and respectful enough to like isolate the people who were not trying to do that and make us feel like we were part of the team, but we weren't like getting dragged into things that we didn't want to do.
Right.
And like, so for me, high school was just the best time. When I went to, it was really Corey Thomas's wedding that I really understood that it was like not a blast for either of them. And that's when like them and Matt Gaziano, they like bonded really closely through like high school's weird. Obviously, like David has a lot of friends and people that care about him, but it wasn't like just this parade of like everywhere I go is stuff that I'm having fun doing,
Mhm.
you know? And so like I think high school was a lot harder on him. And I remember
Sure.
feeling, yeah, I remember feeling a sense of like when I would realize like, oh, me and Corey are like going to Corey's granddad's farm every summer, feeling like, oh, I feel really kind of left out of that and feeling bad. Like I must not be doing a good enough job as their friend, like staying in touch with it. And we're like,
Did Corey went to perimeter too?
he went fourth through eighth grade.
Okay.
So that's where we all became like really tight. But I'd argue like in middle school, David was one of my good friends, but he was not, he was like the coolest guy in high school or in middle school. And so like I didn't feel like I was his best friend anymore because he had so many friends. So I
Hmm.
was already like prepared a little bit for him to not be my best friend for the rest of my life in that way. But I felt a sense of loss, like I must not be a good enough friend to him right now.
Hmm.
Um, but he's still like, these are those like family bonds that are never going to part. Our families would do, it was us, his family, the principal of our of perimeter, their family. We would do these like family get-togethers during the Christmas holidays where we'd like play games and do scavenger hunts and do like, I don't know if you know David's dad at all, but he's like, you know, he's inventing like feats of strength for us to do, like these crazy like tasks and challenges. So we had like a lot of constant like our families are still really tight
Uh-huh.
kind of get-togethers and stuff, but it wasn't like we were hanging out day to day. But it was great knowing like, so Corey was going to do ROTC at Georgetown, David was going to the Citadel, I was going to West Point. I had also I interviewed at UGA's ROTC just in case like West Point didn't go well, and same with UNC. And so I had a UGA ROTC shirt that I wore for like the next 10 years. I wore a Bulldog Battalion t-shirt like all the time because it was like I got this free t-shirt for just saying like I'll do your ROTC, and they're like great, take a t-shirt.
I'm
But
interested.
like West Point was really the only thing on the radar that was going to happen. So I take off in June. It's the classic, like the first thing they do is they shave your head and scream at you and like just kind of try and take you from this world where like, most of the people at West Point were like great at high school or like coming off of being the top of their class and really involved to being like one of them, 1,000 other people. And they've just got to break you down and grind you into kind of nothing to rebuild you.
Mhm.
And so I took it very seriously. Again, like I'm the most naive guy you could find. And so I'm just like, whatever the plan is, like put me in,
Oh, cool.
coach. Like I'm not going to question it.
Coach.
Like do what you got to do, baby. The first summer is like, I think it was 6 weeks of just like,
I'm
you
listening.
know, they're beating you up, not beating you up. You're doing a lot of physical things. They're screaming at you the whole time. You can't. We could call home like once in the middle. There was like a break in the middle where we went to like some random officer's house for like a couple of hours while they reset everything,
Mhm.
and then we could like call home. It was like kind of emotional. I'm like, oh, I'm just like trying to get through, mom
How
and
long
dad.
into
Like,
that? How long into school is this? Like a couple weeks or what?
so the school part hasn't even started. This is just
Okay.
summer training. So
Okay.
it's all like learning how to be in the military, learning how to march and shoot weapons and like wear uniforms and all that.
What a virgin is.
What a virgin is. Finally, someone tells me, no, it's someone who hasn't had sex. I'm like, what?
Oh, I'm like Mary.
Oh my God. I hope I don't get pregnant. If you kiss
I
lying
give birth to
down,
the
then you
Son of
get pregnant, I
God.
think.
I too could give birth to the Son of God.
But I'm like, I'm feeling really nervous about it. And like, I have to restructure my brain. Like, I'm not going to be the king of this experience. Like,
Right.
I'm just here to get through it.
Are you thinking you're gonna go in there and be like fucking Billy
No,
Bass? Oh, okay, okay.
no. That's like, I'm going in knowing like this is going to be different.
Okay.
Like, you know, I don't know if I was aware or if this is just retrospect, but being like, yeah, I was pretty good at like a high school in Georgia, but like there are kids here from schools that are like really
Everywhere.
fucking good,
Yeah, yeah.
like, so one thing I love is like,
Theoretically, it could be like the biggest badasses in the whole country, right?
yeah, there's students from every single state, most territories. We had guys who were prior enlisted, and I was in one of the first classes where those are people who had been to war before.
Whoa.
So like
Joined
the
straight out of high school.
classes,
Now they're going to college.
so the
Whoa.
classes ahead of us, there would be someone who like they left high school, enlisted in the army, and then a couple years later started at West Point. Well, for them, that's like, yeah, in 2000 and 2001. For my class, these are guys who enlisted in like 2002, went to Afghanistan and came back, went to Iraq, came back. And so my class has like, I think we had 40. So the class is about 100 or 1,000. I think it starts with 1,200 people. We probably had 45 prior enlisted people, and probably 30 of them had combat experience. And
Whoa.
so they're like the same age as our upperclassmen, but they have way more experience. And like one guy has a Purple Heart. A bunch of these guys have combat infantry badges. Like one of our guys was in the Ranger Regiment, so he like has a Ranger tab, a Ranger scroll that says like I've been deployed as a Ranger. He'd been shot in the back. He was like he had deployed more than once, and so like there's some fucking legit dudes
Like a month
in
ago,
this
mommy
class.
was cooking your dinner.
Meanwhile, I'm like, oh, cross country is so hard. Like, I really didn't have a good race. Like it's just like you're
Damn.
getting thrown into it.
That's damn. Okay, those guys should have been fucking teaching.
Well, I mean, eventually you learn over time, like they were also like little bitty baby privates who also they weren't like
Right, right,
they
right.
had a lot of experience and it was all really valuable.
Relative.
And but they were also, still 19, still
Right, right, right.
20,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. So we start the school year and the academics are pretty intense. You have to take, you take so much math and science and engineering that regardless of your major, you get a Bachelor of Science.
Oh, whoa,
So
okay.
so like I have a Bachelor of Science degree in history.
Whoa.
Yeah. I
Okay.
took more math and science than I took history.
Okay.
So there's like you don't get to really test out of anything with AP credit. That just puts you in a more advanced class. So
Okay.
I came in with a shitload of like AP classes, but that just made me take more advanced history, English, and all that. Um, and this is also at the time where the surge in Iraq is happening. So Iraq was going badly. Bush says, I'm going to send like 120,000 soldiers there, and that's going to fix it all up. So anytime a graduate at West Point is killed in action, they at the morning everyone has breakfast at the same time. You like have formation, you go to breakfast, then you have like 12 minutes to eat, and then you go to class. So at the beginning, you'd be standing at your table and they would announce, um, attention, all cadets, we regret to inform you, blah, 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 class of, '02 or class of '99 was killed in action 2 days ago in Iraq or Afghanistan. And you'd have a moment of silence. And then that night, I don't remember anyone ordering us to do this. As far as I understand, this was just the tradition that we did. And it was just like everyone knew that's what we were going to do. And that's what we did. Everyone would get in their dress uniform, and in front of all the barracks there's like a big parade field, so you do all these like parades for whatever, like before a football game we do a parade, before like special event you do a parade, but you'd line the parade field in your dress uniform at taps, and then when they played taps you stand at attention, then you sing the alma mater, which end the last verse is basically about after you die, may it be said, well done, be thou at peace. And so you finish the alma mater, and then everyone just silently returns to their room. So everyone is dead silent. You do taps, sing the alma mater, and then you go back. Well,
Every night?
the, no, every time someone died.
Okay.
And
So
so,
like that would get announced at breakfast, and then that night everyone just knew that this
yeah,
ceremony was going to happen.
yeah. Well, so we started losing a shitload of graduates. So, like, the first one that I remember was in September. Emily Perez was the first female West Pointer to be killed in Iraq or Afghanistan. And so that was like the first one. And it's like right off the bat. This is like early September. So after that, it happened. It felt like all the fucking time.
Yeah, it starts happening like
So,
every
like,
day.
as we're like starting school, it's like, hey, man, this is not a fucking joke. Like, this is happening. And as the years went on, it was kind of like, we're going to be doing this. Two of my classmates had brothers that were killed while we were there. So, like, one of them was in my military science class. And so he was just gone one day. And then that morning, we had found out that his brother had been killed. And so our teacher was like, you guys are tracking why he's gone, right? He's going to his brother's funeral. Like, this is why we're having this class. And so it was like, really like sobers you up to the idea that like my college experience is not going to be like a lot of other college experiences. Like, you are in it, and everyone to your left and right is going to go in with it with you. Like, so it was like very intense.
At that point, is it too late? Like day one, is it too late?
You have 2 years to figure it out. So after, in between your um, sophomore and junior year, that's like the cutoff point. So the night before your classes, your junior year, you retake the oath because you're an active duty service member the whole time. So
Right.
you're like in the army. But after
Theoretically, they
two
could send you
years,
off the war right there.
that's only happened during like the Civil War. During World War II, they graduated some classes early, but even then, they didn't just yank people out and send them.
Right.
Although there's also an addendum to that. So after 2 years, if you're like, this is stupid, I hate it here, fuck you guys, you go home. No, you don't pay anything back. You don't owe anyone anything. You get your discharge papers and you live your life. Or like, if you just think I still want to be in the army, but I hate this, you go to one of my best friends now left West Point and went to Loyola and did ROTC at Loyola, and then she went into the army after that. Like, but it's a no questions asked, no problem, have a good life. But if you take the oath again and then you go to class your first day of your junior year, you're committed. So then if you leave, you owe money or prison time or time in the army. So like if you commit a crime, well, I guess if you commit a crime before that, they send you to prison anyway. But like there's a program for like rehabilitation for cadets that are like getting in trouble too much. So if you have a bunch of demerits, it's called the Army Mentorship Program. And so what that is they say, all right, you're getting in trouble all the time, like whether you're getting caught drinking or like late to class all the time, or you're just like not making mature decisions in the eyes of the Army, they send you to a basic because every like vocation in the Army has a basic course for it. So like they'll send you to the basic infantry school or the basic artillery school. Those are the main ones. Put you in an Army unit for 2 years. And at the time, it was like basically send you to a unit that's deploying, give you combat experience, and then take you back and finish out your West Point time with like a more mature and like seasoned view. So like,
So if you were a delinquent cadet, they sent you off to war as your rehab.
they can.
Okay,
I think you have to agree to that.
right.
The other alternative is, or you can get kicked out and you owe us $400,000. You know,
Oh damn! Wait, so this is 100K a year to go to West Point is like the sticker price?
I think that's the price for like what they basically say, because it's all taxpayer money, so like you
Right,
never have to pay it,
right,
but it's like the equivalent is like 4 to 425, $100,000 value of education.
right. Okay.
And so like if you fuck up real bad, then you owe money back, and you
Oh,
like. And so my classmate Jordan
wait. So
Morris
you
is
could just join the army theoretically, join, enroll at West Point, fail out basically for whatever that means, and be stuck with a $400,000 bill.
only if you make it to that third year. So if you fail out the first 2 years, no one cares. You go on your way.
So you could do like 3 years, 3.5 years at West Point, but be like a total fuck up the whole time, spitballs at the teacher, fucking late to class, not going to detention. I'm kidding. But like, and then like they're like, nah, you are the shittiest soldier ever. All that just cost you 400,000. Whoa.
Yes.
Wow. I did not know.
So it's the Army mentorship program is pretty cool, except that my classmate Jordan Morris is the only one that's ever been killed in action. So he would have been my classmate. Yeah, he was in the program. He was actually in the platoon of one of my classmates, Sam. And so we were all, it was when I was over there on my first deployment. So he was like a specialist, like specialist Morris, and his truck got a catastrophic IED. Every single person in the truck died. He's the only person in the Army mentorship program that has been killed in action at this point.
So he got in trouble at school, and they gave
Yeah,
him
he
the
was just
option
like, yeah,
to go to combat early.
yep.
That's his.
So we've petitioned. We couldn't get him added to our list of graduates since he didn't graduate, but he's like an official member of our class, and our first like class gift, because like how your college is always trying to hit you up for donations. For West Point, it's kind of easier because you're all like in the same profession at some point, and you have this. It's a big monolith, so your whole class votes on like what you want to donate, what funds you want to fund within the academy. And so we donated like a remembrance memorial to him as like he was our first classmate killed, and he was like in the Army mentorship program, never got a chance to graduate. So like, so it's like no joke, man.
He's 20 years old or something.
He probably would have been 22, 23.
Jesus. And so but you were deployed at that time when he got killed, or you were?
That was after we graduated. So he was off on like he was pulled out of our, I think, senior year. And so he would have come back like a year after we graduated or 2 years after we graduated to finish out with like the classes behind us.
So he had to finish out his whole thing.
So like
Deployment.
one guy I did graduate with, he had been in the class of '08, and then he got in trouble and everything, went out, big army, deployed to Afghanistan, came back, and he just did the last semester of our senior year with us.
Huh.
So he graduated class of 10, but it only spent time with us for, a semester.
Right. Whoa. What are these kids getting in trouble for that you have to go to the mentorship program?
Drinking is a big one because you're not allowed to drink your first 2 years, even if you're of legal age. The only time you can ever drink is if you're at home on leave. So like at Christmas, if you're 22, you go home and you're like, you can have a beer there. But if you're 22 years old and you're a freshman, you can't go into like Highland Falls, this little town outside. You can't walk into Highland Falls and like have a drink because it's not allowed. Like, so if you're telling a bunch of college students like they're not allowed to drink, a bunch of them are going to. There's no alcohol out in the barracks. When you're a junior, there's like a club that they opened up like once or twice a week that you could walk to and like drink there. And then there's a senior bar that like as a senior, you can go to this bar. It's open every night of the week. And that's where you're like allowed to go and drink. But again, it was open from like 7:30 to 10:30. So like,
Just for seniors.
and if you're a senior, you can bring like your junior classmate along with you. Like, so if you're dating someone who's a junior, you can take them with you and that's fine. But you can't just like show up as a junior and be like, hey, let me in. They're like, no, you have to be, it's for the seniors.
Who's
It's
working
like,
the bar?
it would be a duty, I think. I think they had like a cadet in charge of like checking to make sure who was coming in and out. Like, I think.
And there's no like parties, there's like house parties, dorm parties,
No.
whatever. Okay.
Everyone lives in the barracks. Like all 4 years, you live in the barracks. You live with your company, so you're like mixed in with this group of 120 people that you're with like all the time. And there was like some tailgating before football games, but that was also like
Like sneaky
sketchy.
tailgating? Like sneaky tailgating?
So graduates would come back and tailgate and they're fine. And so if you're like an of age junior, it's kind of okay for you to like have a beer at a tailgate. But if you're like a freshman and you're at like your daddy's a colonel and he's having a party down at the docks before the game and you're caught having a drink, that's like a big deal. you
Okay.
know One of my
You guys are
friends,
all so like fucking in such good shape and fucking like systems are so pure. 2 beers probably get you fucked up.
well, it teaches you to binge drink and like, okay, I've got 3 hours to like
Right.
pound as much as I can, and then I got to go back and study for my engineering class. Like, so like it's high pressure and high intensity, and you can only drink in these limited times. One of my friends, oh man, so punishments are also allocated in hours. So if you are late to class, you might get 5 hours. And what that means is during the weekend, you have to get in your dress uniform, get out your rifle, and you just walk back and forth in this like punishment area for 5 hours.
Whoa, what?
So if you get a drinking violation is like 100 hours. That means every weekend you can do 5 hours on Saturday and then like 2 hours on Friday and two on Sunday or something. And so your whole weekend, you're just walking off your hours until you've done that enough weekends to meet your hours punishment.
And is
So
that
a friend of
legit? Like,
mine,
are people tracking that? Or is it like honor
yeah,
system?
no, that's 100% That's like in a like,
You have to like check in to
yeah,
the walk the punishment garden or whatever.
there's an army officer who's checking you in and like inspecting your uniform beforehand and like
He's
making
locked
sure
around.
everyone's accounted for. So a buddy of mine, West Point is only like a quick train ride from New York City. It's like right there. It's like 45 minutes into the city. So a lot of people would get down to the city, and like there are bars that'll serve you underage and everything, and if you can get away with it, a lot of people do that. So my buddy is down in New York City and he's hammered. He's taking the train back and he is relentlessly hitting on this woman next to him. He doesn't realize that the man sitting next to that woman is his English teacher and that this is his wife. So he is just like hitting on this woman. And finally, as they're like getting up at the train stop, he's like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? He's like, oh no. So he had 100 hours because he's like hitting on his English teacher's wife. And
And
he's like clearly hammered.
are
So
all
then like
professors at West Point veterans?
do what?
Are professors at West Point veterans?
About a third of them are like civilian PhDs. About a third are like colonels, active army colonels that have PhDs, and about a third are West Point like captains and majors that have a master's degree.
Okay.
So it's a shitload of like active duty officers. So like before we were here, we're at Fort Leavenworth right now. Our last duty station was being back at West Point while my wife was like on the faculty.
Oh, okay.
So like there's so many active duty officers there.
Right. What's the schedule? What's your schedule during that 4 years? So you're a 4-year college student. Are your weekends yours? Like, what's this dude going to New York City? How's this dude going to New York City? Like, when could you do that?
The weekends are separated out into they're like military weekends, and that's where you would go out in the woods and do like military training.
Wait, so you have class all week, and then the weekend you have to do practice war?
There are football weekends where you have to go to the football game, but other than going to the football game, you have a lot of your own free time after that. So a lot of these antics happen if there's like a noon game, then people are like, I have until on the weekend taps. You didn't have to be back in your room until 1 a.m. So it's like, all right, if this game ends at 4, I can take the train into the city, be there by 5. I can drink as much as I can until midnight, take the train back, and be back in my room by taps.
And if you're not in by taps, that's like how many hours
Then
is that?
you're fucked. Then you're probably getting 5 or 10 hours.
Okay.
And so like football weekends are fun. And then
But you're allowed off campuses, so they're not like locking down campus in that sense. Or like
you are. Yeah. One of the things
you could go make it to the like it's like a campus like UGA. It's like
it's a military installation. So there are like gates. So you can't just like drive on casually or drive off. Like you have to show your ID, and like if you have a car, they can search your car. But it's like also a campus. So on the base is the cadet area, which has the barracks and all the school classrooms and everything. There's also all the housing for like faculty. So we lived on the base when we were there like a couple years ago. There's like a commissary, like a grocery store, and a PX that's like a mini Walmart basically. There's sports and athletic facilities because every cadet has to be in a sport. So like there are football fields and rugby fields and baseball fields, and like there's also a training area that's like off the main reservation that has like ranges and big swaths of like the Hudson Valley where you do land navigation and like military training in. And so like you're confined to the cadet to the actual like West Point base when you're like a freshman, and you can earn like off post privileges, which means like, okay, once a semester you can like exercise your off post privileges and walk into the shitty tiny town next to West Point and like go to the McDonald's, like so you get more privileges as you go on. But that first year, like you can't talk outside your room. You have to like your hands have to be cupped.
You can't talk outside your room?
Well, in class you can talk, but like if you're walking around, you can't just like walk around with your friends. You have to be going to a specific location. If you're just wandering around, anyone can stop you and be like, where are you going? If you're like, I'm just taking a walk for fun. And you'd be like, no, you're not. Get the fuck back to your room.
They outside.
you have to greet everyone that you see. So like you have to know what their rank is, what the greeting of the day is. So if it's like if you're playing, they played Holy Cross yesterday. So all week you would have to say to every person like, "Beat Holy Cross, sir. Beat Holy Cross, ma'am. Beat Holy Cross, sir." Every time you see someone,
If you just pass them.
just pass them. And so you also have to like deliver laundry.
Wait,
So
what? Even like your freshman, you have to say that to a sophomore?
yeah,
What about
you
to?
say you'd say beat Holy Cross corporal for the sophomores. Freshmen, you don't have to worry about. You're all just
Damn,
so
damn.
like for meals, you're sitting at a
How are you
table,
normal? How's anyone able to? That's a
dude.
incredible testament to like the plasticity of the human brain and its ability to like evolve or adapt to environments. Like, how do you even go from that environment for 4 years and then just be
Dude.
like a normal dude right now? And we haven't even got to being deployed. You got to just think 4 years of that would fucking break you.
West Pointers are weird. West Pointers are fucking weirdos. Like,
Dude, I would get kicked out so fast. There's sometimes I still have like these, because there's something appealing to me about it, the masculinity of it, the nobility of it, fighting a good fight of it. I like developing myself in different ways. But dude, I wouldn't last a month. No,
you have to serve people meals. Like at the
go
end of your
fuck
table is like
yourself.
3 or 4 of the freshmen, and you have to like pass people their food. You have to cut all the desserts into the
Yeah,
appropriate amount of things. You have to deliver their laundry. So laundry duties were like the intense part because everyone sends out their laundry and it comes back wrapped in cellophane, and then the freshmen have to sort all of it, and then you deliver it by rank. So you deliver the highest ranking people's first, all the way on down. But you take it out like 5 people at a time. Their arms are full of laundry, and the upperclassmen are all in that hallway. They slam you against the wall and they quiz you on the like knowledge that you're supposed to be learning about the army. So they're screaming at you like, "What is this? What is that? What is the like? What are your general orders? What did MacArthur say about leadership?" And you have to recite verbatim what these things are that you've learned. And if you don't say it verbatim, you have to go back in the room, which means that you have to resort, like reshuffle who's doing the laundry. And they're going to be more pissed. So the next time you go out, they're screaming at you more. And so it's like for the next hour and a half, you're just getting screamed at. And if you're lucky and you get everything right, you're just delivering their laundry now. And you're like, yes, I'm delivering their laundry. I did it. And it's like there's a certain amount of you that has to like give up this sense of dignity of like
yeah.
I'm 19.
Self-respect.
This guy is 21. He doesn't know that much more than me.
Oh,
Like, but he's screaming in my face, and I've got to tell him the things that I've learned and then deliver him his fucking laundry. Like so it's weird, man. It's a weird place. But like I also liked it. I thought it was
right, yeah.
I felt really in touch with like the history of it. Like West Point has been garrisoned since 1778. There has been an active army presence there since 1778. And it was like I just felt this history of it. And these buildings are like stone and beautiful. And when I was feeling like this place sucks, I would still feel like, but like it's pretty special that I'm here. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty cool that I'm part of this history now. Like
Yeah.
Edgar Allan Poe got kicked out of here. Like that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the coolest generals I can think of went there. It's just it felt really in touch with what I loved. And then I got to study history, which is like that's like it's like saying, do you want to like study your dick and get a degree on it? Like all you have to do is bat it around. Like, yeah, okay. Twist my arm, like fine. Like I had to take a bunch of I took environmental engineering classes because that was like the least intense of all the engineering tracks you could take. But like at the end of the day, I got to study history at West Point, and it was so cool. And because you're so beaten down at the beginning, as time goes on, you feel like I can walk around now. Like I can speak outside of my room. This is amazing. Hi there, sweetheart. How are you?
If I am, that's
It's so
Marshall.
good to see you.
That's
Did you
Marshall.
just wake up?
I don't know where she's coming from. But did you just wake
I'm
up?
in the basement, so my girls don't interrupt me.
Did you sleep in? Yes.
Oh,
Got her fatigues on.
Isn't Mr. Alex the coolest guy? What did she call you? Did she call you Alex?
That was me, Allie.
Allie? Isn't Allie like the coolest guy you know?
She wore her camo for this interview, her Under Armour camo.
That is so special. I appreciate that.
She's a huge military buff.
I
So
hope you're having a good day, kiddo.
I think she is. Um, yeah, dude, that is not yeah, I wouldn't. I see the it is special what you did. It's incredible to me that that many people can go through that. Did it ever get dark? Like how dark does
Yeah.
hazing get? Like,
So
I'm
it's not.
expecting a lot more negativity with your commentary on the military or like not regret, but like criticism maybe.
Yeah. The so you don't get beaten up in the same way that like I think David they could strike them. I think I don't think I ever got hit. You just get like screamed at a lot, and if you also don't care, it's easier. Like I cared a lot, so I'm like, oh no, I did the wrong. I delivered laundry wrong. Then like I felt bad, but there are people that are like, okay, like my classmate who was in the Ranger Regiment, they tried to like scream at him one time. He was like, "This is not going to do what you think it is." And they're like, "What, you think you're some kind of ranger or something?" And he just like showed them on his uniform, like, "Yeah, I'm a Ranger qualified Ranger Regiment combat infantryman. So yeah, I do think that what you're doing is stupid." They're like, "All right, well, carry on." Like
So the system works, it sounds like.
I don't know. I mean,
For
it
what it's
had.
designed to do to create loyal soldiers with who are competent in the fields they need to be competent in.
I think similar to like RTC or OCS, for the most part, it works well. You produce a lot of really good people, a lot of people that are fine, and then some like bad people. Like there are going to be some people who are bad officers, either for incompetence or just outright being like not good people. But in general, I think it's a pretty, for the type of people that want to go there, it's a pretty successful way to do it. But I also have no ill will about people who are like, no, that seems like a dumb way to go to college. I'm going to do ROTC, enjoy myself, and
Right.
then still be in the same place. I think that's also 100% the right answer too.
Right, because if you
Like,
did ROTC, you could also have a traditional college experience to an extent.
absolutely. Like, they actually go to like schools with good football teams that have fraternities and parties, and like you can study what you want and don't have to take like 4 semesters of math and 4 lab sciences and 3 engineering and 3 language credit. Like there's so many restrictive things about it, and that doesn't mean that you're going to be a great officer. It just means that if that's the type of person you are, this might be a great way to get you there.
Right.
So like I love that we have a diverse way to get people into the Army, because I don't think West Point makes you any better or worse than anyone else.
Okay,
Some
that's
people do.
my next question. Well, you don't think it had an impact on the quality of soldier you were afterward? ROTC versus West Point versus
I
going
I
straight
think
to
that has,
high school?
I think it has way more to do with who you are as a person than it has to do. Like West Point has advantages in funding. Like we were flying around in helicopters and doing intense military training because we had money for it in ways
Right.
that you don't get the opportunity to.
Right.
But it didn't make me like a smarter, more tactical person. It just made me a good West Pointer and a good officer.
So
Like
if you were speaking to a high school kid or advising a high school student who was like a good student, athletic, like capable of doing whatever he wanted to do, going to trade school, going to 4 university, potential graduate school, but he was like you, he really wanted to go to the military. What route would you advise him to do? West Point, straight up, like go to the fucking recruitment center or ROTC?
I think it depends on what they want to get out of it. Like I love West Point, and if you have the aptitude and interest in it, I say do it. Like try it. Even if you're nervous, you might find that you can overcome that. Like I was afraid I was going to be the worst one and bad at everything, and I wasn't the best at anything, but like I overcame things and I learned a lot about myself. and I was a lot better than I thought I would be. And I think that's such a great, valuable lesson. But if you also like really value your social life, or really like say you know, you have a girlfriend that you love dearly and you like really want to be with her, and you can't be with her at West Point, like then don't go to West Point. Like there are things in life that are way more important than that.
Right.
My wife was in the admissions department as an officer, and she would tell people all the time, like cadets that were, so like if you're in your first 2 years and you're failing a lot of classes, sometimes they'll say you have to leave, but you can reapply if you pick your grades up at a different school. And they would say like, I don't know, like I think I should just quit forever. And she would say like, you can, or do ROTC there, or if your grades are good enough and you come back, like come back. There's no shame in the way you get to become an officer if that's what you want to do. Or like if all you want to do is be in the army and you don't care about being an officer, and say your time, like if you're coming in 2018, I'm like, do you really want to go like deploy and fight a war? You should just enlist now, man, because we're drying up and you're going to get to an army that's no longer deploying to combat anymore. And if that's important to you, which it is for a lot of people, like spending 4 years here is not going to do it. Like go do that then. So I think there are a lot of avenues for success, in the same way that like I don't think there's a blueprint for how you should do life. And I get really confused by people who just like, I guess you've actually talked about this a lot on the podcast, which I've heard you talk about, like people living life according to like the prescribed plan.
The assembly
I'm
line.
like,
Yeah.
no, man, go make your own plan. Like, I don't know the answers at all. Like since I got retired from the army, I've just been a stay-at-home dad. And like, I don't know what to do next. And I'm not like, I'm a little anxious about that. I would love to have a like, I know what I want to do. Like, of course I don't. The only thing I ever wanted to do was be an intelligence officer in an infantry battalion at war. And I did that. And that was the dream of my whole life. And it was the greatest thing I've ever done. And then like, of course, nothing else is going to be like that impactful and like strike me like lightning, like, of course. So I don't know what's next. And I am trying not to feel too bothered by that. Like, well, I guess I should just go get a job in an office. Like, I don't think that would work for me. Like,
Yeah.
I think I'm going to end up at a national park giving tours of battlefields or something and saying like, this is how you connect to our history. Like, you're here in this battlefield, and guess what? It's not just a patch of dirt. It's part of your story too. And here's why, like that's, I just, I don't know what's next, and that's okay. And there are a lot of paths to being like a successful person, and success means whatever you need it to mean. So like, there are a lot of I had a boss, I was her assistant. So she was our battalion intelligence officer, and I was her assistant intelligence officer. And she was 2 years ahead of me at West Point. And one day she just said something like, well, I mean, because, you get it, because we're both West Pointers. So, like, we're better. I was like, what? She's like, well, yeah, West Pointers are just better officers than everyone else. I was like, like, no offense, ma'am. I'm not trying to, like, step on your toes here. I don't think we just are a blanket statement. And she was like, no, we definitely are. Like, we're better than everyone else. It was like, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree on this.
Does are there kind of factions that exist within the military, like active duty when you're being deployed? That's like, you're a West Pointer, you're a fucking scrub that just came out of high school, you're an ROTC.
Of course.
There are? Okay.
Like, think about, I don't know what a good example is in high school.
Going to
like
college, having a graduate degree, like just in society. That
our lacrosse team at my high school was a bunch of guys who were like really athletic, but also like bros, but also like wealthy, right?
Yeah.
So there's like this distinct combo.
Yeah.
And West Point definitely has an undercurrent of that, because I mean, think about who has the access, who in high school has the access to get the grades, be involved in the extracurricular activities,
right,
to be like, teachers love this person, they're all going to write, a letter of recommendation for them. You have to get a congressional nomination. So like, there are all these things that if you have money and access, you have a way better chance than a kid who grows up in, rural, if you're in rural Georgia. So Atlanta is very like dense and competitive. You're in rural Georgia and you don't have the resources for that. How do you compete against those kids? You might be smarter, more athletic, a better soldier than any of them, but you don't have the access to that kind of stuff to get you into West Point. So like there is an undercurrent of like the old boys club, the kind of rich popular kids club. I would not at all say that's everybody or the majority or anything, but there's an undercurrent of it. And for like if you were in the 1880s, there's a definite like if you're not a West Pointer, then you're a fucking loser.
Right.
But like, now I think there are people that are trying to break down those kind of stereotypes because like I knew a lot of ROTC officers are fucking brilliant. And like OCS guys, my favorite intelligence officer I knew had been an Air Force enlisted guy in the 90s. And so he did OCS and he was just like, if you're in your 40s in the Army, you're a pretty old person. Like,
Yeah.
if you retire 20 years, you might be 20 or 22, So this guy was like 43. And we were like, he's like the oldest dude ever. And he was brilliant, just an excellent, like combat intelligence kind of guy. And so it's like, I think it's crazy to be like, well, West Pointers, we have that special, unique experience, so we're better. Like, no, we had a special, unique experience, but we got a bunch of losers. We got a bunch of brilliant people. We got a bunch of normal ass dudes, like whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You think so clearly the admissions process is tough. So the people that are getting in are already have been fairly thoroughly vetted.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So there's no one. Is there any fat left to cut at that point? Like, are you seeing people that can't make the cut?
Oh yeah.
And they go through, yeah, right? Because it's tough. Fuck, dude, just the laundry situation.
So that first summer, like the cadet basic training summer, my first roommates were like the two fuck ups for our whole platoon. Like they were, one of them just like really had a problem with authority. The other one was just not that smart. And so they really struggled.
Well, how did they get to that point? You get a congressional nomination, your parents are just connected or something?
Well, say you're from Wyoming. How many kids are there in Wyoming? Not that many. Like, so there, if you're in Northern Virginia, you're in the most competitive place in the world for West Point. Right. If you're in Guam, you got a pretty good shot. Or like prior enlisted, they're always trying to get soldiers to come to West Point. But if you're prior enlisted, your grades are probably not as good. You're like, a couple steps removed from your high school shape, So you're not in like, I'm going to the state finals shape. You're in like, I can ruck march for 12 miles shape. Right. So like you get some variety. And then one of the guys in my platoon pissed hot for marijuana on the first piss test. So then I got moved.
Drug test you. I forgot they drug test you.
Yeah. So I get moved out of the fuck up room into a room with a guy who was awesome. So then like, as you progress, one of those roommates in the fuck up room, he graduated, I think 2 years behind us from West Point. The other one ended up leaving West Point, but I think he did RTC and ended up commissioning still. So that's a great example of how like you can get there and it might not be for you, or it might take you a little extra time, but like there's some variety, you don't
military isn't necessarily for you. Like those guys can
that too. Like some people just leave and never go back. I'm friends with one girl who like she went back home to Buffalo and she's a master's of social work and she runs a CrossFit gym and she's awesome, but was like, look, these 2 years have been interesting, but I don't think the Army is where I want to end up. And so she didn't, Right.
Do you see anyone that it made worse? Or is there anything institutionalized just about West Point itself or military? I open it up to the military itself, where it's it's like sending prisoners to prison is only going to make them worse prisoners. Like the worst place to send a criminal is to fucking criminal college. Did you see like the West Point or the military like bring sociopathy out of like latent sociopaths or something like that?
Not personally. I think you can find examples like Timothy McVeigh. You can in interviews, he talked about how the Gulf War helped like motivate him against the federal government
Right.
because like he was an infantryman, he's like slaying Iraqis, and is like, one, this isn't as cool as I thought it would be, and two, this just makes me mad at my own government. And so like he got kind of radicalized by his army service, and that led to the Oklahoma City bombing.
Right.
I mean, also you have Ruby Ridge and Waco in between there that helped him.
Yeah.
But you know, there are people in the military system who have kind of a bend that way. Or I think this is also something that you can find like FBI evidence for, is that like a lot of white supremacists have military experience because, one, if you love guns, the military is a great place for you, you know, and if you love white supremacy, you also probably love guns, you know, like there's overlap in ways that are very uncomfortable. You know, like I've known a couple guys that I'm like, I don't know if I fucking trust you, man. You know, like,
Did you meet anybody at
so
this point like that?
no, there's some weirdos. Like one guy in the class ahead of me, he was just one of those guys who stood out as being like a fucking weirdo. He was prior enlisted, and he like took himself really seriously, but he like wasn't that good at stuff. And he ended up like basically leaving the army early. They were like, well, you were enlisted, and so we'll let you go after like 3.5 years instead of 5. And so he like converted to Judaism and moved to Israel and like started talking about starting militias. And I was like, look, I can't pretend to know the ins and outs of like the Israeli army and military industrial complex, but like this feels like a bad idea. You know what I mean? Like,
Maybe go down the wrong path here.
this feels like we're going down the wrong path. Whereas other people I know like became weed dealers, like weed industry people. Like one guy I know, when Oklahoma legalized weed, he just became like a industrial weed grower in Oklahoma because he was like, his deployment really messed him up, and he was like, yeah, let's go, cannabis is the right direction.
Right.
And that makes more sense to me than like, let's go start a militia, you know.
Start a cult. Okay, let's.
You want to call it for now?
Yeah, but I have so much more. I want to talk to you now so much about the military specifically, like geopolitical. Because I didn't know you. Now I'm wondering, like, oh, this guy knows a lot more about the world that. Not that I thought. Obviously, I knew you're an intelligent guy, but like, I didn't know how read you. You're much more well read than me. Everyone's more well than me, but like, you're much more worldly than I do too. So now I'm like, oh, we could take this conversation a bunch of different directions I never anticipated.
I mean, I'm excited because next time I get to tell you about going from like the most naive guy in the world to like you grow up fast at war. Like,
right. I know this is the most interesting part of the conversation is now that you become a man and going off to war. But this is about to start ramping up on the next.
Bro, I get that, man. I've got to check on mine as it stands. I can hear that the bath is running, so I've got to get up there too.
All right. Well, I'll text you. I will be. If you're free next weekend, I'm pretty free next weekend. We can potentially finish then. If not, we'll find a weekend to finish.
Alex, thank you for doing this. Again, like validating other people's lives and experiences is so important. Whether that's like something cool or something silly, like I think everyone's a little bit like downplays their own life as like a cool experience. But like everyone's story is valid and interesting, and I love that you're giving some people that, and that your intent is to like make yourself a better person. I think that's incredible, and I love it.
Yeah, ultimately it's a selfish exercise. Like
I don't care.
Impetus is like me genuinely being like, what is everybody else gonna do with the rest of their lives? Because I need to figure something out.
Everything is a selfish enterprise.
Yeah.
Not only is survival a selfish enterprise, suicide is a selfish enterprise.
Yeah, no.
There's nothing you can do that's not selfish. So I don't care. You're making people's lives better. I love it.
No, but for you, dude, I hadn't done an interview. I was thinking about it as I was like setting this up. I was like, when's the last time I even did this? I don't even like remember how to do this. I didn't like know where to sit. I didn't know. I hadn't done this in over 2 years.
Yeah.
But dude, just meeting you and connecting instinctually with your soul and your heart, I was like, this is the guy I want to start this with. So thank you,
man.
And we'll pick it up. That's kind of birth through college graduation. We kind of know who you are now, and then the next time we talk, I want us get in obviously your story too, but then launch into your perspective on a lot of different things, especially
Yeah, man, I love it.
military shit.
All right, brother.
All right, Marshall, I love you, brother. I'll talk to you
See you,
soon.
man. Talk to you soon, brother.
All right, peace.
Later.